What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 5C Chapter 111. Status of Soul Society on the way. Long Gui, do you remember what Mr. Urahara said? Rukia said, now that almost all Zanpakuto in the Soul Society have defected, we can't increase our strength for each other, so if something happens to your Zanpakuto. If you do, then you must leave the Soul Society immediately, and I will immediately open the gate of crossing the world and send you back, you know? As I said, Rukia, I'm more reluctant to confront my Zanpakuto than you are. Arisawa Tatsuki said, so, if something goes wrong, I will leave the Soul Society immediately, and I believe in my Zanpakuto? Really? Rukia responded slightly. Since Arisawa Tatsuki's Zanpakuto is actually the strongest Thunder Zanpakuto, they don't really want to face it. When the two came to the 6th Division, the 6th Division was very busy, and Shinigami kept sending some injured Shinigami to the 4th Division, and because of Zanpakuto's betrayal, every time they set off, the group started together. If walking alone, it is easy to be attacked by Zanpakuto. Zanpakuto did not leave, but only temporarily retreated. As soon as Rukia entered the 6th Division, she did not pay attention to these Shinigami, she ran directly to the captain's room of the 6th Division, and all she cared about was Byakuya Kuchiki, the elder brother, big brother. Rukia shouted as soon as he opened the door. If it was usual, Byakuya Kuchiki would scold it in a flat tone. 467 This is the workplace, call me Captain Kuchiki. But now Byakuya Kuchiki is not in the captain's room, inside was only Abarai Renji, the vice captain. Abarai Renji is sitting in front of his vice captain's desk, processing documents, because the whereabouts of the 6th Division captain Byakuya Kuchiki is unknown, so everything is on Abarai Renji's body. Oh, Rukia, it's great that you're back. Abarai Renji immediately raised his head when he heard Rukia's voice, then stood up, walked in front of Rukia, patted Rukia's shoulder and said, hey, it's really Rukia, really yeah, it's been so long, where have you been? I'm very worried about you. Abarai Renji patted Rukia's shoulder as he spoke, and occasionally touched Rukia's head twice, completely messing up her hair. He didn't care about it at all. Rukia's face was already very ugly, not only was Abarai Renji's hair messed up, but more importantly, the few strokes he just slapped completely on his own wound, which almost made the wound open again. Renji, you be asterisk 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 D, Rukia roared, and then with a bang, he punched Renji in the face, knocking Renji directly to the ground, and Rukia, CGBE, moved towards Renji. He shouted loudly, don't go too far, you guy, the wound on my body has not healed yet. I'm sorry, Abarai Renji said while covering his cheeks, and then said with a slight expression, but it's great, you are safe and sound. I don't care. Rukia looked at Abarai Renji and said, big brother, no, how is Captain Kuchiki? Abarai Renji shook his head slightly and said, although a search team has been dispatched, no news has been received so far. It's no big deal. Arisawa Tatsuki walked into the office and said, that guy Byakuya won't be defeated so easily. You be asterisk 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 D. Abarai Renji looked at Arisawa Tatsuki and said in astonishment, Arisawa Tatsuki, even you are here. Is the situation so critical? 39. Forget it. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, as the vice captain, you should also know that Arankar has already appeared in this world, and it won't be too far from Aizen's action day, and if Arankar appears in this world, that guys are likely to use this world as a battlefield. Arisawa Tatsuki said with a pause and then said, I know that when facing Aizen, the Soul Society will be the main force, so I hope that the Soul Society can deal with Aizen wholeheartedly without any worries, although I also hope he doesn't treat the world as a battlefield. Advertisement, I see. Abarai Renji nodded slightly and said, but Arisawa Tatsuki, since you are here, it proves that you should already know something. If your Zanpakuto also turns traitor. Deputy Captain, just as Abarai Renji was speaking, a Shinigami walked in, glanced at it, paused and saluted slightly. Kuchiki-sama, acting Shinigami-sama, Deputy Captain. Abarai Renji had no choice but to say, what's the matter, tell me. Yes. Hearing Abarai Renji's words, the Shinigami said, the search team has just returned, but they were attacked by Zanpakuto, some people failed to return, and many people were injured, only a few people were fine, the subordinates and others want to send these wounded to the 4th Division for treatment, but we are not enough manpower, if we encounter an attack by Zanpakuto. Damn, I know, I'll send them there myself, Abarai Renji said. Arisawa Tatsuki slightly stretched out his hand to stop Renji and said, forget it, I'll help you this time, it just so happens that I'm going to the 4th Division. Now that Byakuya is not here, you should have a lot of things to deal with. As for Rukia, she should stay here, I think she should have a lot of things to ask the search team. So let me go, and if Rukia happens to stay in the 6th team, I can rest assured. This. Abarai Renji was slightly taken aback, hesitant to make a decision. Arisawa Tatsuki patted Abarai Renji's shoulder casually and said, okay, don't hesitate, let's just do it, after all you have time to hesitate, the wounded outside don't have time to wait for you to make a decision, I'll go first. Arisawa Tatsuki said directly to the Shinigami, he said, if you can trust me, come with me to the 4th Division. Of course, Deputy Shinigami, the Shinigami said with joy immediately, then looked at Rukia and Abarai Renji and saluted slightly. Deputy Captain, I will let the search members come here. Deputy Shinigami, please come with me. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and followed this Shinigami out of the 6th Division's captain's room. Hey, Arisawa Tatsuki. Abarai Renji called twice, but Arisawa Tatsuki just waved his hand and didn't stop, and Abarai Renji could only shake his head, as Arisawa Tatsuki said, now that Byakuya Kuchiki is not there, the entire 6th Division relying on him to support, so if it is not necessary, he cannot easily leave the 6th Division, otherwise. If a division does not have a captain and a vice-captain, it will be paralyzed immediately. Of course, the 11th Division is not counted. This division is led by Zaraki Kenpachi, a group of guys who only know how to fight, not at all. What is fear, so even the absence of the captain and vice-captain is no big deal. When Arisawa Tatsuki was about to come out, he said, that's right. Ichigo and Yoruichi are also here, so this matter should be resolved soon. Abarai Renji was stunned when she heard this. Out. Arisawa Tatsuki followed the Shinigami out. In front of the 6th Division, there were 5 or 6 Shinigami lying on stretchers. Their bodies were covered in blood, and they were wrapped in a lot of bandages. Knowing that it was the people of the 6th Division, the purpose was to stop the bleeding first, and then send it to the 4th Division for treatment. When they saw Ichigo and the Shinigami next to Ichigo, they all gathered around and said, how did the vice-captain arrange it? They can't last long. Chapter 112, First Meeting Muramasa. Arisawa Tatsuki glanced at him and said, I'm Arisawa Tatsuki, Shinigami's agent, and I know you can't go to the 4th Division alone because of Zanpakuto, but now the Vice-Captain Abarai Renji has too many official duties and can't spare time, so if possible, how about letting me go to the 4th Division with you? Anyway, I also have something to go to the 4th Division once. Thank you. Several Shinigami immediately opened their mouths to Ichigo. Then I will ask you on the way, Deputy Shinigami. If there is Deputy Shinigami, then there is absolutely no problem, several Shinigami said loudly Road. Since you are all at ease, then let's go. Arisawa Tatsuki said, after all, the injured companion can't delay for too long. Companion. A few Shinigami were stunned for a moment, and then said with joy, yes, Acting Lord Shinigami. Then several Shinigami immediately lifted the injured Shinigami and left the 6th Division with Arisawa Tatsuki, heading towards the 4th Division. Go ahead. Arisawa Tatsuki took the initiative to walk in the front. In addition to Arisawa Tatsuki, there were 2 Shinigami walking in front with Arisawa Tatsuki. Arisawa Tatsuki and the others were naturally injured when they were behind. Tell me about the situation. Arisawa Tatsuki looked at the 2 Shinigami beside him and said, I just came over from reality. To be honest, I don't know much about the situation of Soul Society. Tell me about the situation before the project. Yes, Acting Lord Shinigami, Shinigami next to him said. In fact, the matter has just happened, and the subordinates and others are not very clear about the situation, but it is already obvious that Zanpakuto's mutiny. Zanpakuto rebelled against the master, and attacked the master, and we will never show mercy. Now we can only react passively, and we cannot take the initiative to attack at all. So now I can only defend each division, and as for the rest of Jingling Court, I can only give up temporarily. Said the name Shinigami, as if something suddenly sounded, and then said, oh, yes, the 12th Division. The captain of Kurotsuchi Mayuri seems to be researching why Zanpakuto betrayed the Yuan Ying. I think as long as Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri researches 3, then the matter of Zanpakuto can be resolved quickly. I hope it can be faster, Arisawa Tatsuki said. After all, if we don't figure it out, we won't be able to face the aggressive Zanpakuto. We can only keep retreating as before, but now we have nowhere to go. Now, we can't go back. If we figure out the root of the matter, then I'm afraid we can only use the method we least want to use. Sir Shinigami. Shinigami next to him looked at Arisawa Tatsuki in surprise. They didn't understand what Arisawa Tatsuki meant, but they looked at Arisawa Tatsuki and felt a little uneasy in their eyes. For a while, everyone fell silent, and Arisawa Tatsuki didn't say much, and the group silently walked towards the 4th Division. The 4th Division is a medical division, so the 4th Division has almost no achievements in combat, and there is also a private ranking among the 13th Divisions of Godai. Because the 4th Division has no achievements in combat, the 4th Division the team has the lowest status among the 13th team, but Yuno Hanaretsu is the captain of the 4th team. Because of this relationship, although the 4th team has the lowest ranking, the treatment and housing it received are not the best. Yes, but it surpasses some other divisions, and the position of the 4th Division happens to be the center of each division, and even the 1st Division is not at the very center, although there were many people at the beginning. I am dissatisfied, but there is no change, because the captain Yamamoto Uenujai Shigekuni decided in this way. In Soul Society, the captain can be regarded as the highest existence, so the position of the 4th team has not changed. The entire Soul Society, the center of the entire Jingling Court, but this situation is the best for now, not bad. Advertisement seeing that it won't take long for the 4th Division to arrive. Arisawa Tatsuki stopped abruptly, looked behind him and said, since you're here, why don't you just come out directly? It's not like a big noise to hide in this way. The behavior of Zanpakuto of the Spirit Garden. When he heard Arisawa Tatsuki's words, the surrounding Shinigami was slightly stunned. But when they saw that there was still a person standing in front of them, they immediately pulled out all the Zanpakuto from their waists, Although it was said that there was no sword soul in Zanpakuto and Shikai was no longer possible, but the sword in their hands was after all it's the knife they've been using all the time, and if they suddenly don't have this knife, they're probably not used to it. Arisawa Tatsuki waved his hand slightly to Shinigami behind him, then pulled out the tinlay from his waist and said, "This place is not far from the 4th Division, let's go first, hurry up and send the injured comrades here for treatment. As for this guy, I'll just stop him." Shinigami, who was surrounded by Deputy Shinigami, was slightly taken aback and said, "No, Deputy Shinigami, how could we leave you and run away? We want to fight with you. I know your intentions." Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, "But your mission now is to send your wounded companions to the 4th Division, not to stay and fight. If you stay too, then in case you encounter Zanpakuto again if we do, then our comrades will be in danger, so you must send your comrades to the 4th Division, understand?" "Yes, Deputy Shinigami-sama." Several Shinigami responded loudly at once. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly, holding tinlay in his hand, he suddenly rushed towards the person in front of him, the zanjetsu in his hand slashed fiercely, the chang, with a sound. The other party took out a samurai sword and held Arisawa Tatsuki's thunder. Arisawa Tatsuki said loudly, "Let's go quickly." "Yes." The Shinigami behind Ichigo responded, and then they all took the wounded Shinigami rushed towards the 4th Division not far away. Arisawa Tatsuki looked at the man who was driving the thunder in his hand with a sword and said, "Sorry, your path ends here. I won't let you go any further. You seem to be mistaken, Arisawa Tatsuki," the man said, looking at Arisawa Tatsuki's actions. "I have no interest in those Shinigami. I am here to find you, Arisawa Tatsuki." "You know me? Who are you?" Arisawa Tatsuki asked, looking at the man in front of him. "Ask for flowers. Don't you already know?" the man said with a smile. "I'm Zanpakuto, but you probably don't know my name yet. I'll tell you. My name is Muramasa, please give me more advice." Muramasa. Arisawa Tatsuki was slightly startled. At this time, Arisawa Tatsuki suddenly felt a force coming from the sky thunder, and then with a clang, Arisawa Tatsuki and Muramasa suddenly retreated, and the two distanced themselves. Advertisement. Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Muramasa and said with a whole expression, "You are Muramasa. It seems that it is because of your appearance this time that Zanpakuto will betray." "Mutiny, don't say it so badly," Muramasa said. "I just helped Zanpakuto get rid of the shackles of Shinigami, so they can be free. And Arisawa Tatsuki, I have been waiting for you for a long time, now it's your turn. Arisawa Tatsuki, your Zanpakuto are still bound in your hands, and I will set them free. You know I'm coming to Soul Society." Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Muramasa and squinted slightly. "0. Huh?" Muramasa said with a smile. "Do you think that Rukia Kuchiki can escape Soda no Shiryuki's pursuit and escape into this world alone?" 39. "I see." Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, "I understand, you deliberately let Soda no Shiryuki force Rukia, and when Rukia escapes to this world, as long as Rukia arrives in this world, then I will definitely resume the discovery. Then whether Rukia is dead or not I will definitely come to the Soul Society. I am afraid that your order to Soda no Shiryuki is to force Rukia into the world and let you handle it, etc." Arisawa Tatsuki said without waiting for Muramasa to speak. "Well then, I'm here now, tell me, what is your purpose in bringing me to the Soul Society?" "Purpose?" Muramasa looked at tinlay in Arisawa Tatsuki's hands and said, "My purpose is your Zanpakuto, Arisawa Tatsuki." Muramasa said, "My purpose is to free all Zanpakuto from Shinigami's bondage." "Freed from it, and Arisawa Tatsuki, you are Shinigami's agent, you have been in this world, my power can't affect this world. So I can only let you come to Soul Society, and let you come, only let Rukia Kuchiki come forward. HMPH, I don't believe that under normal circumstances, Zanpakuto would betray Shinigami." Arisawa Tatsuki tightened tinlay in his hands and said, "I think you should have caused Zanpakuto's betrayal. As long as you can kill you, then Zanpakuto's betrayal. Things will be resolved immediately." "Really? That's what you thought?" Muramasa said softly. At this time, the sword in Muramasa's hand suddenly disappeared, and at the same time he opened his palm to Arisawa Tatsuki. A gust of wind suddenly hit Ichigo, and at the same time blood flowed from Muramasa's eyes, and Arisawa Tatsuki was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that blood would suddenly flow out of Muramasa's eyes, so Ichigo was slightly taken aback, but then Arisawa Tatsuki noticed that his body was moving. Not anymore. Can't even struggle at all. At this time, a Shinigami dressed in a black death tyrant came, and stood directly between Arisawa Tatsuki and Muramasa, looked at Muramasa and said, "You really make me look good." 99 times. Chapter 113. Analysis. Arisawa Tatsuki was very surprised to see the visitor and said, "Ichigo." Hearing this, Muramasa looked at me very solemnly and said, "Are you Kurosaki Ichigo?" I didn't speak and he said, "If you don't answer, I'll guess that you are Kurosaki Ichigo." At this time, another person also came to me and said, "This is Muramasa. How is it hurt?" It was Shihouin Yoruichi, and she was surprised to see Muramasa shedding blood and tears. Hearing Arisawa Tatsuki saying, "I don't know about that either, but he just blew out suddenly." Hearing Shihouin Yoruichi pondering here, Muramasa said, "Why did you two come to Soul Society?" After hearing his question, Shihouin Yoruichi came back to his senses and said with disdain, "Where are we going? You still have to worry about it." 35 He stopped talking when he heard this. Then I won't disturb the two of you. After saying that, he walked away instantly, and Arisawa Tatsuki stopped him and said, don't run away. But Muramasa left, because he didn't have any confidence in 473 to Kurosaki Ichigo, and also added a Shihouin Yoruichi to make Muramasa more uncertain, so Muramasa withdrew. And his goal now is just to save his master, so he doesn't want to breed too many enemies, especially Kurosaki Ichigo. When he left, Arisawa Tatsuki was very dissatisfied and said, Ichigo Yoruichi, why don't you two stop him? Hearing this, I said indifferently, this guy, I have no desire to do anything. Listen, Arisawa Tatsuki has black lines all over his face here, doesn't it mean that he is weak? Although Arisawa Tatsuki wanted to refute, he still gave up, and Shihouin Yoruichi smiled and said, okay, don't be depressed, let's go 4 times first. Let's go. Let's find a way to restore Zanpakuto. Hearing this, Arisawa Tatsuki nodded and said yes, while Shihouin Yoruichi looked at her as he was about to leave and said, don't underestimate the enemy in the future, we can't always, I'm here to save you. Shunpo left before Arisawa Tatsuki promised Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi. Thinking of what he had just encountered, Arisawa Tatsuki also pondered for a while, then returned to his original state and set off for the 4th division. The two of Ichigo, who were standing upstairs, looked at Arisawa Tatsuki's back and Ichigo said, why did you start preaching too? Hearing this, Shihouin Yoruichi said very coquettishly, of course not, it's not because. When I wanted to say something, I saw Ichigo's smiling face and jumped into my arms, beating me coquettishly and saying, you're so bad. I laughed and said, do you like me bad, or do you like me not bad? Hearing this, Shihouin Yoruichi thought about it in my arms and said, I like it all. At this point, I kissed her forehead and said, okay, it's time for us to do something serious. Shihouin Yoruichi also nodded when I heard this, and then I hugged her Shunpo and left. And after Arisawa Tatsuki came to the 4th division, Uno Hanalai arranged a place for her to rest for a night, and then the next day, Arisawa Tatsuki got up and saw that the captain of the 4th division Unohana Retsu was bringing her looking at himself with a smile. Just looking at Unohana Retsu's smile, Arisawa Tatsuki felt a chill in his heart. Before Unohana Retsu spoke, Arisawa Tatsuki spoke first. Good morning, Captain Unohana, you are so early. Get up. Good morning, Yuzawa, Unohana Retsu said with a smile. It's getting late, do you think I'm a bedridden woman, Yuzawa? No, for the black-bellied Unohana Retsu, I am afraid that the entire Soul Society is only not afraid of Yamamoto Uenujai Shigekuni, who is the captain. As for the others, I am afraid that this is a bit of a fear, even the original Aizen Sosuke. The fear in Unohana Retsu's heart is probably no lower than that of the captain. So when Arisawa Tatsuki faced Unohana Retsu, he was also very afraid. Mama, Captain Unohana, now is not the time to think about this. Kiraku Shunsui, wearing a very fancy pink Captain Haori, stood behind Unohana Retsu and said, Arisawa, look at you, last night. Have a good rest. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded and said, very good. Jashiro Yukitaki said, tell us if you have any discomfort, and Arisawa Tatsuki also nodded. By the way, Captain Unohana, Captain Kyo, Captain Jashiro, do you have anything to do with me? Arisawa Tatsuki immediately changed the subject when he heard Jashiro's words. Now that Zanpakuto is betrayed, you should be very busy, why don't you come to see me so free? Hearing here Jashiro Yukitaki said, it's because Zanpakuto is the only one who hasn't defected yet, so I came to you and asked some things. Hearing here Arisawa Tatsuki said, did something happen? He read a sentence, and followed Kiraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki and Unohana Retsu came to an office. Advertisement, Captain Unohana, leader of the Jing Band, leader of Jashiro. Abarai Renji saluted them and said, my subordinates have come with their Zanpakuto. Hearing Renji's words, Arisawa Tatsuki put his eyes on the two people behind Renji. One of them was a little boy, but there was a long snake's tail behind him. The rest of the woman. Abarai Renji pointed at the two people and said, they're my Zanpakuto, Zabameru, they can be called Ape Woman and Snake Man respectively. I see. Ichigo nodded slightly and said, it turns out that the first person has already regained his Zanpakuto. Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Kiraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitaki and said, you want to find the point in Renji's acquisition of Zanpakuto, then figure out a way for everyone to reconquer their Zanpakuto. That's right, so please re-narrate the situation, Abarai. Unohana Retsu looked at Abarai Renji and Zabameru and said, also ask Zanpakuto to talk about how you felt at the time. How did it feel at the time? The ape girl and the snake man folded their arms and pondered for a long time, then shook their heads and said, forget it. Idiot, how could you forget this kind of thing? Abarai Renji shouted loudly. I forgot, I just forgot, there's no reason for that, Snake Man said, it seems that I can't remember what happened after I left Renji. We are indeed idiots, but who made our master Renji? There is no way to do this, Ape Girl said angrily. Hey, do you mean one of my idiots? Renji was furious, idiot, Renji big idiot. Snake jumped directly to Renji's neck and said. Then the three of them got into a fight. At this time, Shihouin Yoruichi Shunpo came in and was surprised to see Kiraku Shunsui, who was coming, and said, I didn't expect you to come too, Yoruichi. Hearing this, Jashiro Yukitaki said, you came, Yoruichi, did Mr. Kurosaki also. When he was about to say something, Shihouin Yoruichi nodded and said, yeah, Ichigo is here too. 35 Hearing this, Kyoraku Shunsui hurriedly asked, where is that Mr. Kurosaki? I heard Shihouin Yoruichi say, where is he outside? He said he didn't want to come in, so he was outside the 4th Division's quarters. Here Jashiro 1.4 Shuru said, I'll go and invite Mr. Kurosaki. Shihouin Yoruichi said when he was going to call Ichigo, forget it, we'll leave after I finish talking anyway. So Jashiro Yukitaki had to stop. Then Yoruichi, what are you here to say? Egg no Hanaru said at this time, and Shihouin Yoruichi said, I'm here to tell you the reason for Zanpakuto's betrayal. Hearing this, people became serious, and then Shihouin Yoruichi said, Muramasa, the ability of this Zanpakuto is to magnify the anger of those Zanpakuto against the master hundreds of times, so as to betray, so the solution to this problem is to see the master of Zanpakuto. What should we do? Jashiro Yukitaki asked, and Shihouin Yoruichi went on to say, it is just that the dissatisfaction and resentment in Zanpakuto must be dissipated while fighting Zanpakuto, and then Zanpakuto will give in again. Hearing this, everyone pondered, and then Shihouin Yoruichi said, I have said everything that should be said, so let's go first. After that, Shihouin Yoruichi left. Advertisement Chapter 114. Madarame Makaku and Ayasagawa Yumichika. After listening to Shihouin Yoruichi's words, they also thought about it and said, since Mr. Kurosaki and Yoruichi already know the method and told us, and it seems that Zanpakuto was influenced by Muramasa, only then will it materialize and kill the master, that is to say, the man who claims to be Muramasa is very likely to be the mastermind behind the Zanpakuto incident this time. Okay. Kyoraku Shunsui stood up and said, it seems that this is the only way to do this. We will immediately pass on the order, but at the same time, we must add one more thing. If we encounter Zanpakuto, but we cannot recover immediately, then just kill Zanpakuto. Chunshui. Jashiro looked at Kyoraku Shunsui slightly in shock, but before Kyoraku Shunsui could speak, he figured out the key and nodded slightly. Yes, it really can only be like this, after all, since Zanpakuto is after being awakened by Muramasa's inner dissatisfaction, it is very likely to be under his control, so Zanpakuto is likely to attack other people under his control. Maybe my Pisces will attack the spring water, so here we are when necessary, you can only destroy Zanpakuto first. After all, it takes a lot of time for everyone to find their Zanpakuto and conquer them, and they won't stand in place and wait. This. Arisawa Tatsuki hesitated for a moment, then stood up and said, yes, I know. Since there is nothing to do here, then I will go first. I think you should also need to communicate these things to other people. It's the squad. Arisawa Tatsuki turned and left the office. Shoo, Arisawa Tatsuki rushed out of the 4th Division, but Arisawa Tatsuki who had just rushed out of the 4th Division, two figures appeared in front of Arisawa Tatsuki, and the two of them happened to stand in the way of Arisawa Tatsuki. On the way, Arisawa Tatsuki stopped, took a look, and saw a beautiful man on the right. Although the word, beautiful, is used for women, the man in front of him definitely deserves the word, beautiful. The person on the left is even more recognizable, a big bald head, bright, and can even reflect light. Only the 3rd seat Madarame Makaku and 5th seat Yasagawa of the 11th team will have this combination in the entire jingling court. Yumichika, the two of them have always been in focus, and Meng is inseparable. Naturally, it appeared together now. One corner, Gongjin, why are you here? Arisawa Tatsuki looked at the two of them and asked with a little joy. Arisawa Tatsuki and they really didn't know each other, and the three of them had a very good relationship. Yo, Long Gui, greeted from the corner, and Ayasagawa Yumichika also said hello to Arisawa Tatsuki, and then Arisawa Tatsuki asked, Konkun, what's the matter with you and Yijou? The two of them looked at each other the same, and the corner opened the mouth and said, Long Gui, we heard that you already know how to reign in Zanpakuto after your betrayal, so we came to you. Our purpose is very simple, I also want to reconquer my Zanpakuto. That's right. Ayasagawa Yumichika nodded slightly, then pulled out his Zanpakuto and said, without the lodging of the sword soul, this sword has lost its luster and is not beautiful at all. Let's go, let's talk while we walk. Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Madarame Makaku and Ayasagawa Yumichika and said, Abarai Renji, the vice-captain of the 6th Division, has also successfully recovered his Zanpakuto Zabumeru. We have communicated with each other. I understand, how to conquer Zanpakuto, and Ichigo and Yoruichi also told us everything they know, so I will tell you all this along the way, but whether you can conquer your own Zanpakuto depends on you, it's up to you. Advertisement, Mr. Kurosaki is here too. Madarame Makaku asked in surprise, and Ayasagawa Yumichika looked at her curiously, and she nodded and said, yes, Ichigo and Yoruichi are here, and this they also told us how to conquer Zanpakuto. Hearing this, they said, as expected of Mr. Kurosaki. Arisawa Tatsuki was a little dissatisfied and said, do you want to listen? Hey, I'm sorry, tell us first, how to reign in Zanpakuto. Madarame Makaku twitched the corner of his mouth and said with a smile. When the time comes, I must let Hazukumaru return to my Zanpakuto. I also want to let the peacock come back. Ayasagawa Yumichika said, holding up his Zanpakuto. Otherwise, my sword will not be able to regain its luster, it's ugly. Let's go then, Arisawa Tatsuki said, if you want to conquer Zanpakuto, you must first find Zanpakuto, but Zanpakuto doesn't know where it is now. But according to Abarai Renji's experience, those Zanpakuto are likely to find them automatically, so we can only hang out in the jingling court, and hope your Zanpakuto can find you soon. Otherwise, we don't know how long we will hang out. 35. Isn't that just right? Yasugawa Yumichika said, you can just tell us how this is going to take over Zanpakuto. Let's talk as we walk. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, actually, Captain Unohana, Captain Kyo, and Captain Jashiro already know about these things. Even if I don't say it, I'm afraid they will pass the news down. Speaking of Arisawa Tatsuki and Madarei Mikaku, Yasugawa Yumichika chose a random direction and walked in a random direction. Arisawa Tatsuki said, the reason why Zanpakuto betrayed and even attacked the master is because Zanpakuto is dissatisfied with the master. It's no big deal, but these dissatisfactions accumulate, and then under the guidance of Muramasa, the dissatisfaction becomes resentment. Once Zanpakuto resents the master, he will naturally leave the master, and once resentment master, then there will be a gap between Shinigami and Zanpakuto, and there will be no dialogue. In this case, Zanpakuto will naturally be unable to Shikai. Therefore, there is only one way to re-subdue Zanpakuto, and that is to dispel Zanpakuto's dissatisfaction and resentment. The methods of various Zanpakuto are different, but one thing is the same, that is, it is necessary to fight with Zanpakuto. Only during the battle can the dissatisfaction and resentment of Zanpakuto be dispelled. Renji did this, just didn't know you. Is it the same? Dispel Zanpakuto's dissatisfaction and resentment? Madarei Mikaku said silently, and then said, I don't even know what my Zanpakuto is dissatisfied with himself. Let's talk about 477 when you reach your Zanpakuto. Arisawa Tatsuki said, when the time comes, you can directly ask your Zanpakuto. Then Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Yasugawa Yumichika and said, although I don't know that the Zanpakuto in one corner is because what, I'm not dissatisfied with a corner, but I know that Gongshin's Zanpakuto must be dissatisfied with Gongshin's name for him. Who knows? Yasugawa Yumichika said indifferently. But no matter what, I will not change his name, Longwei. There should be other ways to conquer Zanpakuto. Yes. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, although Zanpakuto is dissatisfied with the master, these dissatisfactions are not a big deal in the end. The main problem is that their dissatisfaction has been expanded by the village as unlimited, so if they can be in the positive during the battle, if you directly defeat Zanpakuto and make Zanpakuto submit, you will be able to subdue Zanpakuto, but this kind of thing is not so easy to do. First of all, without the soul of the sword, we naturally cannot let Zanpakuto liberate, and Zanpakuto can naturally. It's easy to do, so that we are at a disadvantage from the beginning, and how we use Zanpakuto is learned from Zanpakuto. From this point of view, we should also call them a teacher, so if we fight Zanpakuto, if we do, we must use all our strength from the beginning, otherwise we may not even be able to resist. One corner, bow and kiss, you have to think about it. Once you get into battle, it will not be so easy to stop at that time. Now, the probability of cutting off Zanpakuto is not low, you have to consider this. Chapter 115, Attacked. Arisawa Tatsuki, Madarei Mikaku, and Yasugawa Yumichika have been hanging out in Jingling Garden for not a day or two, but Zanpakuto has not heard the slightest news these days. It seems that all Zanpakuto are hiding. Madarei Mikaku and Yasugawa Yumichika did not find their Zanpakuto. Really, it's been several days, and I haven't met Zanpakuto at all. What's going on? Madarei Mikaku said impatiently. Are all those Zanpakuto missing? Calm down. Arisawa Tatsuki said softly. Perhaps our Zanpakuto is waiting for us to lose our only patience. You should also know that if we can't keep our minds calm, we will lose our composure very soon. If not, if we fight calmly, then we have already lost half of the battle before we fight it first. Perhaps the reason why those who have not appeared is because they want us to lose our cool. One corner. Long Gui is right. Yasugawa Yumichika nodded slightly and said, you must remain calm in battle. Anyway, we've been looking for it for several days, and it's not bad for a while. Damn. Madarei Mikaku read out a sentence, forcibly suppressed the irritability in his heart, and continued to walk forward. On the other side, in a tent in a forest, there is a man and a woman hugging each other and sleeping, and there are a lot of picnic equipment outside the tent, and the pot outside the tent exudes a burst of fragrance, and it is connected to the barbecue grill. The meat skewers also made a greasy sound, and the golden color was very attractive. The two people inside the tent didn't care about the outside affairs at all, they still hugged each other and fell asleep, and both of them were very casual. And if someone sees their bodies, they will definitely make others feel ashamed, because these two are the most perfect bodies. And these two are none other than Kurosaki Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi. After coming to Soul Society, the two were very relaxed, because Kurosaki Ichigo said that this incident was caused by a Zanpakuto, and it was also a trouble to save his master. It came out. So Shihouin Yoruichi was curious. Ichigo helped her find it, but after seeing its strength, Shihouin Yoruichi was very disappointed, and Ichigo also knew Shihouin Yoruichi's disappointment, so Ichigo brought Shihouin Yoruichi to camp. The morning sun shines on Shihouin Yoruichi's face through the tent, and Shihouin Yoruichi wakes up hazy after being irradiated. When he was about to get up, he felt that he was still with me and shrank in my arms again, and I also opened my eyes and looked at her and said, why don't you get up? Hearing this, Shihouin Yoruichi was very attached and said, can you rest for a while? No said, I don't think I didn't feed you last night. Hearing this, Shihouin Yoruichi felt the swelling below, and seeing Ichigo eager to try, he hurriedly said, I'm getting up now. Seeing her hurriedly getting up, I smiled and said, just kidding. Shihouin Yoruichi was very angry when he heard this, and he fell down on me and said, I'm going to punish you. I also began to grope on her, and after a few minutes Shihouin Yoruichi's eyes became blurred. I kissed directly when I saw this, and Shihouin Yoruichi also responded. When the kiss was almost done, I let go of Shihouin Yoruichi and let her lie down and said, okay, lie down for a while, I'll go out and prepare breakfast first. After that, I covered Shihouin Yoruichi with a blanket, and I was very casual. Put on trousers and go out topless. When Shihouin Yoruichi came back to his senses, he saw Ichigo going out. From the window of the tent, he was very happy to see Ichigo preparing breakfast, and his eyes were so gentle that he seemed to melt Ichigo. Ichigo felt Shihouin Yoruichi's gaze, so he turned around and said with a smile, it's time to get up for breakfast, little lazy cat. Hearing Shihouin Yoruichi's claws, he said, I'm not a lazy cat. I also chuckled when I heard this. He turned around and prepared breakfast. And Shihouin Yoruichi got dressed, and after Shihouin Yoruichi got dressed, Ichigo finished breakfast too. When I saw her coming out, I said, come and eat. But Shihouin Yoruichi was still standing there, and then I saw her pursed lips came to her with a smile and kissed directly next to her, and then she couldn't pretend to be angry, and fell softly into my arms, and then I hugged her with the princess and sat by the dining table. Advertisement after my mouth left hers, I looked at her affectionately and said, since you don't do it yourself, let me feed you. Then I started to feed her, and Shihouin Yoruichi didn't refuse, eating very quietly in Ichigo's arms. On the other side, the three of Arisawa Tatsuki randomly chose a direction to go. Anyway, they didn't know where Zanpakuto was hiding, so it was the same wherever they went, so they chose a direction at random. Time gradually passed. Madarame Mikaku raised his head slightly to look at the sky, shook his head slightly and said, looks like, today's busy work again. Ayasagawa Yumichika patted Madarame Mikaku's shoulder and said, forget it, we haven't already, are you ready? 35. That said, but they hide like this, it makes me very uncomfortable, Madarame Mikaku said impatiently. Hey, hurry up, bring the stretcher, after all, they will be sent to the 4th Division immediately. Don't delay, their injuries are very serious. Hurry up, let's go together, otherwise, in case of encountering Zanpakuto again, it's troublesome. Suddenly, there was a burst of noise in the distance. Judging from the sound, it was obvious that a lot of people came, and from the words of these people revealed a message that they had met Zanpakuto. Arisawa Tatsuki, Madarame Mikaku, Ayasagawa Yumichika. The three of them looked at each other, and then disappeared in place in an instant, and then on the rows of eaves and walls, the three figures of Arisawa Tatsuki kept flashing. Soon Arisawa Tatsuki and the three of them came to the noisy place. In front of them, a group of Shinigami was protecting two people. From what they just said, it seemed that they were going to send to the 4th Division. Master Madarame Mikaku, Master Ayasagawa Yumichika, Master Shinigami, Zhao Zhao. Seeing Ichigo and the three of them appear, the group of Shinigami gave a slight kneel and then saluted. But neither Arisawa Tatsuki nor Madarame Mikaku paid attention to these condescension. Their eyes were on the two people lying on the stretcher. Big brother, Kira Izuru, who was lying on a stretcher, looked at Madarame Mikaku and others who appeared and said, so you met Zanpakuto? Madarame Mikaku asked Kira Izuru excitedly. Yeah, it's my Kazuma, said Isagi Shuhei on the other stretcher. Kazuya attacked me, and Kira rescued me. Although we let Kazuya push away, both of us were seriously injured. Kira could have been healed, but he himself was seriously injured, so we had to let them send us to the 4th Division. That's it. Madarame Mikaku glanced at it and said, then hurry up, don't delay the treatment. Then he moved away and let them pass. Chapter 116. Hazukumaru. Just as they were about to leave, Arisawa Tatsuki raised his head slightly and looked at the sky in the distance. Ayasagawa Yumichika saw Arisawa Tatsuki's actions for the first time, and asked with some doubts. Longui, did you find anything? Muramasa and the others are here, Arisawa Tatsuki said softly, then put his hand on his Zanpakuto. Well, I feel it too, and besides Muramasa, there seem to be two Ryotsu. I don't know if they're who, but I think it should be Zanpakutos. Oh, I feel it too, Ayasagawa Yumichika said. They didn't hide Ryotsu in any way. It doesn't seem like they wanted to attack us. Isn't it better this way? Madarame Mikaku smiled and said, it's the most troublesome to sneak around, isn't it better to come out and fight? HMPH, I think I know what Zanpakuto is coming. Arisawa Tatsuki looked into the distance and said, apart from Muramasa, the others are Hazukumaru in a corner and Gongjin's peacock. Arisawa Tatsuki didn't say it directly the name, glass-colored peacock, because it needs to be said by Gongjin himself. Is it my Hazukumaru? This is really nice, Madarame Mikaku said excitedly. I've been looking for him for a long time. Oh, Long Gui, how did you know? Ayasagawa Yumichika said, although we can already feel each other's Ryotsu, we can't tell which Zanpakuto is from the Ryotsu. How did I know it was Hazukumaru and my peacock from a corner? It's very simple, Arisawa Tatsuki said. In order to find Zanpakuto, we haven't put away our Ryotsu for a few days, and we can sense our Ryotsu from a distance, and our Zanpakuto has always been with us. For our Ryotsu naturally, it is more clear, and you have seen the matter of Hisagi's eldest brother just now. His Zanpakuto attacked him. In this case, coupled with the previous Aburai Renji incident, it is obvious that Zanpakuto will attack his master, and this the Zanpakuto who came next time was obviously aimed at a few of us, and could feel our Ryotsu, but it was still coming towards us, not what is our Zanpakuto. Oh, it makes sense. Madarame Makaku smiled and said, but no matter what, since they have already come, then it would be better. Madarame Makaku's mouth rose, and his left hand tightened the Zanpakuto in his hand. Arisawa Tatsuki took a sip, then looked at the Shinigami who were escorting Hisagi Shuhei and Kira Izuru. What are you doing here? Hurry up and send them to the 4th division. Just leave it to the 3 of us here. Yes, acting Lord Shinigami. Those Shinigami responded immediately, then raised Hisagi Shuhei and Kira Izuru and hurriedly headed for the 4th division. The 3 figures of Shu appeared in front of the 3 of Ichigo. The one in front was naturally Muramasa, behind him stood 2 people, and the one on the left was a strong man with long hair and a beard, with darker skin and eyes and feet. With red eyeshadow, there is a thick black line on the chest, and the other on the right is a very handsome man, wearing clothes similar to a puppet suit. Listen. Long Gui, this is a fight between the 2 of us, so you are not allowed to take action. Madarame Makaku said, otherwise I won't spare you. Hearing this, Arisawa Tatsuki also let go of Zanpakuto's hand and said, okay, then I'll go watch Muramasa, don't let him mess around. 35 Madarame Makaku and Yasugawa Yumachika nodded when they heard this. And Madarame Makaku put his gaze on which brawny man, looked at him and said, could it be that you are? Advertisement, what? Don't you recognize me, buddy, said the brawny man, holding a spear in his hand, which was exactly what Madarame Makaku's Zanpakuto Shikai looked like after. Humph. Madarame Makaku looked at the strong man and said, if you are Hizukumaru, then come and prove it. Prove? How do you want to prove? Hizukumaru asked, looking at Madarame Makaku. It's easy. Madarame Makaku smiled and said, if you are really Hizukumaru, then you must know that, and you can use that to prove it. That? Hizukumaru was stunned for a moment, then showed a faint smile and said, that's the one, okay, come on. Madarame Makaku and Hizukumaru looked at each other and seemed to be waiting for each other to get ready. Just cha-cha. Madarame Makaku and Hizukumaru tiptoed and danced step by step. Although they were 2, they were very tacit, as if they were dancing alone. Just because the 2 of them danced this dance, so everyone looked at the 2 of them, watching their dance, and there was a sense of powerlessness in their hearts. With a pop, Madarame Makaku and Hizukumaru stood still with their weapons raised at the same time. Although Hizukumaru was holding a spear, Madarame Makaku was holding an unsheathed one. Zanpakuto, but the movements of the 2 were exactly the same, and the 2 said at the same time, how lucky. Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi were watching them fight on top of them. Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi felt Muramasa's Ryotsu came directly after they came out. After seeing Madarame Makaku's and Hizukumaru's dance, it was also very interesting. It was speechless and helpless, and Shihouin Yoruichi said, they are really weird, and Ichigo said, no, the owner of Zanpakuto is too weird. Shihouin Yoruichi didn't refuse and nodded after hearing this. The picture returns to them. Hey, Yijao, now is not the time to watch you dance, I don't want to watch your lucky dance at all. Arisawa Tatsuki said with a black line. Looking at your dance, maybe you will boost your morale, but for me, it's just a blow to my momentum. What? Long Gui, what are you talking about? Madarame Makaku shouted loudly while looking at Arisawa Tatsuki, but there was no way to see Arisawa Tatsuki's impatient expression. Forget it, this dance is perfect anyway. Madarame Makaku turned his head slightly to look at Hizukumaru and said, sure enough, you are indeed a fake Hizukumaru. Madarame Makaku said, only Hizukumaru can keep up with my actions, as long as I hit you here, I'll be able to get back the power of Zanpakuto. Is it just you? Hizukumaru didn't even put his eyes on Madarame Makaku, but looked to the other side and said, is it possible? It was obvious that Hizukumaru was very disdainful of Madarame Makaku. HMPH, just try and see. Madarame Makaku said with a slight pause, since you are my Zanpakuto, then you should know the rules of battle very well. Of course. Hizukumaru pointed at Madarame Makaku with his spear in his hand. The battle must be one-on-one, and absolutely must use all of your strength, otherwise, even if you die, there is nothing to complain about. Going up, took out his Zanpakuto from the corner of the half-mu and charged directly towards Hizukumaru. Chang Chang Chang. Madarame Makaku holds Zanpakuto in his right hand and the scabbard in his left hand while attacking Hizukumaru. Zanpakuto and the scabbard keep attacking Hizukumaru. And Hizukumaru can only hold the spear horizontally to resist. From the beginning, Madarame Makaku gained a huge advantage and attacked Hizukumaru. But Hizukumaru seemed to be completely suppressed, and he could only defend continuously with the spear, CGBE, in his hand. But as the saying goes, if you defend for a long time, you will lose, although Hizukumaru held the spear to resist the fierce attack of Madarame Makaku's sword and scabbard, but soon a cold light flashed across Hizukumaru's face, and a bloodstain appeared immediately, and the appearance of this bloodstain made Hizukumaru's movements a little slower, and it was this thread that made 2 bloodstains appear on Hizukumaru's abdomen. Advertisement, what's the matter? is this my Zanpakuto? Madarame Makaku said loudly. With such little strength, it's too vulnerable. Madarame Makaku's purpose was not just to mock Hazukimaru, but more if he wants to disturb Hazukimaru's heart. Once his heart is disturbed during the battle, his strength will be greatly reduced. Don't worry, mate, Hazukimaru said. The battle has just begun. I just want to see your power. Since you can't wait, then I will use my power. Hazukimaru immediately calmed down and entered a calm state of mind in an instant. With a sound of clang, Hazukimaru held the spear and held Madarame Makaku's spear. Madarame Makaku immediately held the scabbard and pointed towards Hazukimaru's chest, and this posthumous Hazukimaru pushed the spear suddenly. Madarame Makaku immediately felt a huge force coming from the Zanpakuto in his hand, making Madarame Makaku unable to control his body for a while, and took a small half-step back. And it is this small half-step, all of a sudden the offensive and defensive transposition. Hazukimaru stabbed Madarame Makaku with a spear in his hand. Madarame Makaku hurriedly hit the spear with a scabbard, and Zanpakuto stabbed towards Hazukimaru. With a pop, Madarame Makaku's scabbard hit the middle of the spear. You must know that the spear held in Hazukimaru's hand is a spear in appearance, but it is actually a fusion of 3-section sticks. The principle, but it is not just a 3-section stick, it should be a 3-section gun. And the scabbard in Madarame Makaku's hand was hit in the middle, so naturally, the spear immediately turned into 3 sections, and the point of the spear turned, and the tip of the spear was cut directly towards Madarame Makaku. Madarame Makaku's pupils shrank slightly. If this time is cut, then obviously Madarame Makaku's entire head will bloom, and the cut in Madarame Makaku's hands. Although the Pokemon is stabbing towards Hazukimaru, Hazukimaru has already avoided the key point. If this is the case, then Madarame Makaku will definitely die if his head blooms, and Hazukimaru will only be injured, even serious injuries. It doesn't matter, it's a very cost-effective deal to exchange injuries for life. With a dang, at the last moment, Madarame Makaku could only withdraw his Zanpakuto to block the fatal blow. However, in this way, Madarame Makaku was completely caught in a passive beating situation, and I saw Hazukimaru constantly attacking Madarame Makaku with a 3-section gun, and Madarame Makaku could only barely resist. After all, Hazukimaru. What he holds in his hand is the weapon after Shikai, and what Madarame Makaku holds in his hand is only Zanpakuto who has not yet Shikai. Under normal circumstances, Shikai's strength is 2 to 3 times that of Shikai, and Bankai is 5 to 10 times that of Shikai. Of course, there are always exceptions to everything. The power of Shinigami itself is the most important, just like Aizen Suyu in the original book. At first glance, when he left Soul Society, he was only Kyoka Suigetsu of Shikai, and he was still able to defeat Ichigo and others after Bankai. Although Shikai is not as exaggerated as Bankai, but facing Zanpakuto who is not Shikai, the advantage is still very obvious. In addition, Hazukimaru's own strength is not under Madarame Makaku, so after Hazukimaru exerted his strength, Madarame Makaku immediately fell into a complete situation. Being passive, it was even worse than when he attacked Hazukimaru just now, at least just now. Hazukimaru can also be used as all attacks, even if they are not blocked in time. They are some big ones, while Madarame Makaku, facing Hazukimaru's attacks, can only block most of the attacks, and some of them can't be resisted at all. Poochie, Poochie, sounded 3 times in a row, and I saw 3 stab wounds appearing on Madarame Makaku's body. This was not the kind of small flesh wound that Madarame Makaku caused to Hazukimaru without even a drop of blood. Although it is not big, it is very deep, because each of the spears in Hazukimaru's hand pierced directly into Madara's eyes. The body of the horns caused great damage to Madarame Makaku every time, and the blood gushed out like a spring. It seems that you are vulnerable. Mate, Hazukimaru looked at Madarame Makaku and said, and then the 3-segmented spear in his hand folded into a spear, which Hazukimaru slammed down. Damn, the movement of the body has slowed down. Madarame Makaku looked at the falling spear. Although he wanted to dodge, his body was a little bit reluctant. After reading a sentence, and then holding Zanpakuto and the scabbard in front of him with a bang, the spear slammed into Madara. On the knife and scabbard in the corner of the eye, although the tip of the spear did not cause damage to Madarame Makaku, the huge force attached to the spear directly smashed the half-Mew family out, and with a bang, Madarame Makaku directly crashed into a house. Inside, but the huge force directly crashed the whole house. Chapter 117. Glass-colored peacock on the other side, Arisawa Tatsuki couldn't help but started thinking about attacking Muramasa, Shu, and at this moment Arisawa Tatsuki disappeared in place and appeared behind Muramasa, holding Zanpakuto's hilt in his hand, and then headed directly towards Muramasa, cutting down. Hash plus hash equals Muramasa saw the figure of Arisawa Tatsuki disappear, his pupils shrank slightly, and at this moment, Arisawa Tatsuki appeared behind Muramasa, and the hilt in his hand swung down. Muramasa immediately used Shunpo to disappear in place. When Muramasa disappeared, when it reappeared, it was already quite far away. Arisawa Tatsuki's strength has improved a lot with the battle. Seeing Arisawa Tatsuki's current strength, Ichigo also nodded. Muramasa looked at Arisawa Tatsuki, and stretched out his hand slightly to betray Arisawa Tatsuki's Zanpakuto. But in an instant, a sword strike came, and Muramasa had to dodge when he saw it. The sword hit the ground and opened a hole in the ground, and it was a deep hole. Seeing this, Muramasa's pupils shrank, and then he looked towards the sky. And Arisawa Tatsuki also looked up to the sky and saw two people standing there. Arisawa Tatsuki was very happy, and Muramasa's face was a little bad. Seeing Muramasa's bad face, Arisawa Tatsuki felt very relieved, and then Muramasa's face returned to its original state and said, "Do you want to kill me?" Muramasa smiled, ignoring Arisawa Tatsuki, looking at writing to Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi. "Are you sure you want to do this? Or, what happened to the chief captain Yamamoto Motoyazai Shokai? Did you all ignore it?" And when Arisawa Tatsuki was about to charge, "Wait a minute, Ryuki." Hearing Muramasa's words, Shihouin Yoruichi immediately stopped Arisawa Tatsuki, looked at Muramasa and asked, "What do you mean by that?" "It's nothing, it's just the literal meaning," Muramasa said with a faint smile. "You should know that Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni is in my hands. If I die, then he will be sealed forever. Without Yamamoto Uenyuji Chongguo, in this Soul Society, I see who else has the qualifications and ability to become the captain, to lead the entire jingling court and the other 12 captains." And Ichigo has been watching from the sidelines. Shihouin Yoruichi is listening. "Look at me at the back," and then motioned to her casually. Shihouin Yoruichi fell silent, and then the abilities of the other 9 captains flashed in his mind. Except for Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni, no one else can become the captain and lead the other captains. This is not just a relationship of strength, although strength is also very important, but more of other abilities. Kyoraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki, although the two of them are disciples of Yamamoto Uenyuji Chongguo, but they do not have the qualifications, and both have their own shortcomings. Jashiro is not in good health, and Kyoraku Shunsui cannot give the slightest steadiness. Yuno Hanaretsu is very strong, and she has enough qualifications as Shinigami, who was in the same period as Yamamoto Uenyuji, but in the end she is still a woman. Although the other captains respect her, it does not mean that they are willing to make her the leader. Captain Byakuya Kuchiki is the patriarch of the Kuchiki family, which is the head of the 4 noble families. If she becomes the chief captain, then the Soul Society will become the Kuchiki family's world, so Byakuya Kuchiki will not work either. Broken B, she can perfectly control the Shinjun, but he can't take charge of the entire jingling court, and as the commander-in-chief, he must have enough majesty. I'm afraid Broby will not be able to have enough majesty in his life. Komamura Sajin, not to mention other, his strength is not enough, and his appearance unacceptable by many Shinigami, so also unable to be captain. Hitsugaya Dashiro, he is a gifted child. He came to the Soul Society less than 100 years to become the captain, and was an ordinary soul in Rukongai for decades. He created the history of the Soul Society, and he has a high mind and a good relationship with other people, but he is still too young. The handling of many things is too immature. Zaraki Kenpachi, a fighter who only knows how to fight, doesn't mention it. Kurathushi Miyuri, a Frankenstein who only knows about research, also doesn't mention it. In this way, except for Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni, there is no other person who can become the captain at all, and the other captains who are qualified to become the captain are only Hitsugaya Dashiro, who has matured hundreds of years later, of course, and Aizen Sosuke, who has left Soul Society and entered Hoeko Mundo. In fact, he is the most suitable character to be the captain, but unfortunately he is a Shinigami who betrayed Soul Society. And when Shihouin Yoruichi was thinking, "See you next time, Kurosaki Ichigo." Muramasa looked at Ichigo and said with a smile, while his body slowly disappeared. Arisawa Tatsuki tightened Zanpakuto in his hand. "Let him go, Dragon Gui." Shihouin Yoruichi said, "We can't take any risky actions until we find the captain." Advertisement. Hearing this, Arisawa Tatsuki had to give up. Then Arisawa Tatsuki said, let's go and have a look. That direction should be a corner where he fought Hazukimaru." When Madarame Mikaku and Hazukimaru were fighting, Yasugawa Yumachika also found the remaining man, but although the two did not speak immediately after meeting, they left the place very tacitly, until they left for a long time. After the distance, the two talents stopped. "Looking at you wearing a peacock suit, you should be a rattan peacock." Yasugawa Yumachika looked at the handsome man, a peacock with a color of glass, and said, "To even want to kill your own master, it is still very ugly and psychological behavior. You be asterisk 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 D, don't put on the air of a master in front of me." Well, appeared on the forehead of the colored peacock. "You are not allowed to call me that name again, otherwise, I will kill you. Katakana middle dot flowers katakana middle dot. Oh, it's really ugly." Yasugawa Yumachika looked at the glass-colored peacock and said, "The way you fight and kill, I really doubt whether you are my Zanpakuto, Fuji peacock. You guy, I've decided to kill you." The colored peacock was easily angered by Yasugawa Yumachika. Vine peacock was the name Yasugawa Yumachika gave him, and he didn't like it very much. It's like at the time of liberation, if Gongshin called this name, then he would only be half willing to shikai, but he has stopped this name for many years, and even he can't remember exactly how many years, and he is angry with this name. He has already accumulated to the limit, and this time, with Muramasa's ability, he can be freely embodied. So he decided that he would never want to hear this name again. If anyone mentions this name again, he will definitely let the other party pay the price. And the first one who needs to pay the price, naturally gave himself this name, and has been calling his master Yasugawa Yumachika like this, but he did not expect to meet this time, and the other party called him like this at the beginning. the face of Yasugawa Yumachika shouting to himself like this appeared in the mind of the peacock of the color of glass, and the anger of the peacock of the color of glass skyrocketed in an instant. Point 0. Then come on, let me see how powerful you are, Fuji Peacock. Yasugawa Yumachika continued. As soon as the glass-colored peacock heard Yasugawa Yumachika's words, he stopped talking, directly pulled out the Zanpakuto from his waist, pointed at Yasugawa Yumachika with the tip of the knife, and said, "Bloom out." The rays of light, peacock feathers also appeared from the sword, and then the blade of the sword became 5. But then the 5 blades became glass-colored vine-like things that extended out, and immediately shot at Yasugawa Yumachika. You don't even say hello, just do it, Vine Peacock. It looks like you've become a lot uglier after you left me. Yasugawa Yumachika looked at the rushing vines, and immediately ducked away, and at the same time he didn't forget to speak. HMPH. I think you've become ugly, the colored peacock said. You're trying to use your words when you're dying. You should be very clear about my abilities. You should pray now that you don't get caught by me, if not, your time of death is coming. He said that the hand holding the handle of the sword turned, and the 5 vines immediately changed direction and attacked Yasugawa Yumachika. Yasugawa Yumachika didn't speak, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. Facing the rushing vines, he didn't dare to speak again, but focused all his attention on avoiding the attack. This is his Zanpakuto, so he knew very well about Zanpakuto's ability. He knew that once he was entangled by these vines, Ryatsu would be pulled away, and unless someone came to save him, there would be no room for resistance. Chapter 118. Yasugawa Yumachika's glass-colored peacock. The 5 glazed vines of shoo 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 flashed a beautiful light. Yasugawa Yumachika kept dodging, and at the same time, the Zanpakuto in his hand kept waving out, directly cutting off some close vines. But the glass-colored peacock's face did not change in the slightest, and Yasugawa Yumachika also knew that although he was able to resist the glass-colored peacock's attack now, it was because the glass-colored peacock did not express its full strength. Then you will immediately fall into crisis, but you will not be able to get close to the peacock with the glass-colored peacock at all, let alone launch an attack. So Zanpakuto has no Shikai, except for Kido. There is no longer any way to attack from a distance. As for Kido, he is in the 11th division. In this battle division, no one uses Kido at all. Even if there is, they are all transferred to other divisions. Even Yasugawa Yumachika, using Kido to scare people and deal with some miscellaneous fish is no problem, but it is just a joke to want to use Kido to deal with the glass-colored peacock that is equal to or even slightly surpassed by himself. HMPH, as my master, with just such a little strength, this kind of strength has been my master for so many years, you are really a disgusting fellow, the colored peacock mocked unceremoniously. With a boom, a vine wrapped around Yasugawa Yumachika's palm, and with a swipe, at the same time, Yasugawa Yumachika immediately cut off the Zanpakuto in his hand, and the stopped figure instantly left the place and appeared about 10 meters behind him. The place, and the ground he was standing on was hit by 4 vines in an instant. If Yasugawa Yumachika's speed was a little slower, he would be entangled by all the vines immediately, and the outcome would be announced immediately, and the consequences of failure, countless Shinigami have known with their lives, Yasugawa Yumachika, but he didn't want to die at all, especially at the hands of his own Zanpakuto. The glass-colored peacock stopped, and he looked at Yasugawa Yumachika who was gasping for breath, because the fighting time was not short. Although the glass-colored peacock was not tired, it just consumed a lot of physical strength, and Yasugawa Yumachika's physical strength was more than half consumed, and was just entangled by vines. Although it was cut off immediately, some Ryatsu was still sucked away. Makes Yasugawa Yumachika's Ryatsu slightly lower. The glass-colored peacock did not launch an attack, but looked at Yasugawa Yumachika and said, "You are really vulnerable, Bowie, is this your full strength?" The glass-colored peacock walked towards Yasugawa Yumachika step by step. It's really disappointing. I originally thought that your power should be stronger, but I didn't expect it to be just that. He said with a slight pause, but it's no wonder that you're not Aburai Renji, and naturally you're better than Aburai Renji. Without him, he can use his own strength to make his own Zanpakuto submit, and you can't do it without his strength. Anyone with a little discernment can see that the purpose of the colored peacock is to I want to disturb Yasugawa Yumachika's mind, but these words are true. Even if I see it, I am afraid that my heart will be affected. It can be said to be a real conspiracy. Hey, the battle isn't over yet, what are you doing in such a hurry? Yasugawa Yumachika looked at the colored peacock and said, "People can't get angry. If you get angry a little bit, then it's easy to get small pimples. Look, Liuli Peacock. A small pimple has popped up under the corner of your mouth." Really? The glazed peacock was slightly taken aback, although he was vaguely uneasy. His reason told him that he should not listen to Yasugawa Yumachika's words, but the emphasis on appearance made his reason flash and then disappear. Now, he took out a mirror out of nowhere and looked into it, especially under the corner of his mouth. He began to look for the little pimple in Yasugawa Yumachika's mouth at that moment. When Yasugawa Yumachika saw the glass-colored peacock and took out the mirror to look for the little pimple that didn't exist, he suddenly turned around and ran away. The glass-colored peacock was slightly taken aback. He thought that Yasugawa Yumachika would take the opportunity to sneak attack and attack himself. But he didn't expect that Yasugawa Yumachika would escape so suddenly, so the glass-colored peacock was stunned for a moment. But even this time, Yasugawa Yumachika escaped a distance of tens of meters, and the glass-colored peacock immediately woke up. He threw the mirror in his hand and immediately chased after Yasugawa Yumichika. Stop, you B********************. D. What kind of Shinigami are you, and what the fifth seed are you? You escaped during the battle. The glass-colored peacock shouted loudly behind Yasugawa Yumichika. Yasugawa Yumichika turned his head slightly and looked at glancing at the glass-colored peacock chasing after him. He turned pale in shock, then stepped up and disappeared in place in an instant. Then appeared in the distance. Advertisement, damn, this guy actually uses shunpo, can't I? The glass-colored peacock said, and then a little under his feet, the figure also disappeared and appeared in the distance. But the glass-colored peacock hurried to catch up, didn't even see the smile that flashed from the corner of Yasugawa Yumichika's mouth. The glass-colored peacock kept chasing. The two of them ran for a long time, and Yasugawa Yumichika seemed to be a little helpless. Ryotsu descended, and the speed also decreased slightly. It seemed as if the strength had decreased and could not maintain that kind of high speed as the same. No, it is not like, and it is like this at all. At least that is what the colored peacock thinks. The glass-colored peacock saw Yasugawa Yumichika's appearance, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Then, regardless of Ryotsu's smile, he speeded up and chased Yasugawa Yumichika again. The distance between the two quickly shortened, from the original 50 meters, then 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters. The glass-colored peacock can even feel the smell of sweat coming from Yasugawa Yumichika, so the glass-colored peacock believes that Yasugawa Yumichika's Ryotsu has been exhausted. Otherwise, according to Yasugawa Yumichika, how can it be possible? The only possibility is that the smell of sweat will appear on your body, and the only possibility is that it may appear after you have not enough Ryotsu on your body and consume a lot of physical strength. In a blink of an eye, the two came to a corner. Yasugawa Yumichika slowed down a little in order to turn, and at this moment, the glass-colored peacock suddenly accelerated, catching up with Yasugawa Yumichika in an instant. The knife in his hand slashed. Just let me give you back all the humiliation you gave me. The humiliation that the colored peacock said was of course in time for Yasugawa Yumichika to call him the name, Fuji Peacock. Originally, it was no big deal, but it was all in Muramasa's after the ability is infinitely expanded. It is not like life and death, so the glass-colored peacock does not hold back at all. Although the tentacles of the glass-colored peacock, 5 glass-colored vines wrapped around Yasugawa Yumichika's neck, right hand, waist, legs, and only one vine wrapped around Yasugawa Yumichika. A smile appeared on the face of the glass-colored peacock, and then the 5 glass-colored vines immediately gave out bursts of light. It was obvious that Ryotsu, who was absorbing Yasugawa Yumichika, under normal circumstances, once caught, then the vines with Ryotsu will be drawn immediately, and Shinigami of Ryotsu will be drawn, because Ryotsu is forcibly drawn, so it will gradually be unable to use strength. So if you are entangled, unless your Ryotsu has not been drawn much at the beginning, the strength has not yet been drawn. Cut off the vines immediately before disappearing. Otherwise, there is absolutely no possibility of escape. And just when Yasugawa Yumichika was entangled in vines to extract Ryotsu, Yasugawa Yumichika raised his head slightly. A smug smile appeared on his face. This smile made the glass-colored peacock a little puzzled. He didn't know why Yasugawa Yumichika was at this time. He also laughed, which made him wonder. You've been fooled, the glass-colored peacock. Although the Ryotsu from his body was still being extracted and his power was disappearing, Yasugawa Yumichika said with a smile, I won this battle. The glass-colored peacock won the battle. The colored peacock froze for a moment. At this time, the body with colored pupils froze suddenly, especially in the eyes of the colored peacock. It lost all its radiance, leaving only unbelievable surprise. He lowered his head. On his chest, a knife penetrated his body. The tip of the knife penetrated from his back. Since I told you that you have pimples on the corner of your mouth, I have already started to calculate this step. Yasugawa Yumichika walked out of the vines, looked at the glass-colored peacock lying on the ground, and said, I know you are 1.4. I really believe what I say. But it will leave a part of my mind to pay attention to me. So I didn't attack you at that time, because I know it's useless. But if I turn around and run away, your thoughts will be different. You will think that all this is for me to escape. You will naturally catch up immediately, and after chasing here. Your stamina and Ryotsu have also consumed a lot, and because you have been chasing me. You did not notice, the distance between us is getting closer and closer. If I were you, I would keep a certain distance, and wait until Zanpakuto catches and chases each other for a while before getting close, because then even if the other party wants to die together, there is no such thing as but you don't have it. Vine Peacock, when you see me running away, you lose your cool, so Vine Peacock, you are still recovering. Knife. Po. HMPH. The colored peacock snorted coldly, I told you, don't call me this name, call me the colored peacock. Yes, yes. Yasugawa Yumichika nodded slightly and said, I see, the glass color. Peacock. Following Yasugawa Yumichika's opening, the glass-colored peacock closed his eyes slightly, and then the whole body slowly disappeared. Advertisement Chapter 119. Captive Hazukimaru and Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi dared to go where they fought against Madarei Mikaku, and Arisawa Tatsuki followed behind us. Bankai Ryamon Hazukimaru. Hazukimaru shouted loudly. The Ryotsu on his body rose into the sky, and the spear in his hand turned into a whirlwind and flew directly into the sky, and then he saw a huge 3-section weapon similar to an axe falling down. Think of it as an axe first. Hazukimaru picked up an axe with a dragon pattern engraved on it, and then Hazukimaru held an axe in each of his hands. Madarame Makaku stared at Hazukimaru in shock. You actually know Bankai? What are you surprised about, buddy? Hazukimaru smiled. Isn't this a very obvious thing, and you can Bankai, how could I not be able to Bankai? That's right. Madarame Makaku was stunned for a moment, then nodded slightly. It's true that I'm stupid. Madarame Makaku, who was holding Zanpakuto in Yoko's hand, stared tightly at Hazukimaru. Hey, in this situation, do you still want to fight me, mate? Hazukimaru looked at Madarame Makaku, raised the axe in his right hand and said, Mate, indeed, your strength is beyond my imagination, even if it's not so easy for me after Shikai to defeat you without Shikai, but now it's different, I'm Bankai now, you should know that after Bankai 26, I can easily defeat you. Really, that's not necessarily, Madarame Makaku looked at Hazukimaru and smiled. I can stop you after Shikai, but not necessarily can't stop you after Bankai. I see. Hazukimaru nodded slightly and said, that's a good idea, mate. That's how fighting should be, even in the face of a strong enemy. Hazukimaru raised the axe in his hand and said, but mate, fighting is not based on ideas. Hazukimaru directly danced the Ryamon Hazukimaru in his hand. The dragon pattern on the axe surface, which had no luster, was immediately filled with red at this moment. Madarame Makaku waved away. Looking at the surging power, Madarame Makaku didn't even have the idea to dodge, because he knew that he would never be able to dodge, and he could only raise Zanpakuto in his hand and lay beside him. With a boom, Ichigo, Shihouin Yoruichi, and Arisawa Tatsuki came to Madarame Makaku's side. When they saw what was in front of them, Ichigo hesitated and did not move, and Arisawa Tatsuki's figure moved slightly, but Ichigo stretched out. Stopping Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Ichigo hesitantly and said, Ichigo? We can't intervene. Long way, Shihouin Yoruichi said softly. If it's another battle, can you rescue Madarame Makaku, but right now, as long as this battle isn't over, we can only stay here. Why? Arisawa Tatsuki asked suspiciously. If he is shot, it will be very dangerous and he may die. In recent days, Arisawa Tatsuki, Madarame Makaku and Yasugawa Yumichika have all been working together, going around looking for Zanpakuto, although we only got along for a few days. Arisawa Tatsuki still has a good feeling for this heroic bald head and beautiful sissy. Of course, this good feeling is only the scope of that kind of friendship. Boom! When Shihouin Yoruichi and Arisawa Tatsuki were talking, Madarame Makaku was directly hit, and the whole person vomited blood and flew out. On the ground, Ichigo said, because this battle is a battle between Madarame Makaku and his Zanpakuto, it is a battle between the two of them, and it is about his dignity. If we shoot, then it is equivalent to killing for his self-esteem. As friends, we can only watch, no matter what the outcome is, we can't intervene, unless the battle is over as before. Ichigo put Madarame Makaku down, only to see Madarame Makaku tightly closed his eyes. Very obviously, in the blow just now, Madarame Makaku passed out. No, it should not be said that he passed out, it should be a temporary shock. With a sound of, dang, Ichigo held a Tensei-Zanjetsu and fought against Hazukimaru. Hazukimaru backed away and opened the distance. Ichigo's eyes glanced slightly, then he looked at Hazukimaru and said, you really won the battle against Madarame Makaku, but since you are here, don't even think about leaving. Then Shihouin Yoruichi said to Arisawa Tatsuki. Long way, you immediately take Madarame Makaku to the 4th Division to let Captain Unohana heal. Ichigo and I will capture Hazukimaru. Advertisement, yes. Arisawa Tatsuki immediately carried Madarame Makaku on his back, and then stepped a little, and the figure disappeared immediately. Hazukimaru looked at Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi. He kept diverting his eyes between the two, and suddenly Ichigo raised Tensei-Zanjetsu with one hand and slashed towards Hazukimaru. Hazukimaru raised the red axe on the table with both hands, blocking him in front of him, when Tensei-Zanjetsu stood on two axes, the enormous force cracking the ground on the soles of Hazukimaru's feet in an instant. But at the same time Hazukimaru was also very difficult, although Ichigo did not exert all his strength, but the current Ichigo is not something that Hazukimaru can contain. And Shihouin Yoruichi watched from the side and didn't make a move, because she knew she didn't need to make a move at all. Ichigo held the hilt in his hand, and with a sudden flash, Ichigo appeared behind Hazukimaru and slashed towards Hazukimaru. And Hazukimaru didn't perceive Ichigo's figure at all, but it seems to be because of instinct. With a sound of, dang, Ichigo was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect that this attack would be blocked. Looking at it intently, he saw that Hazukimaru lowered the blade of the axe he was carrying, thus blocking Ichigo's attack. When Ichigo was slightly absent-minded, Hazukimaru and Ichigo distanced themselves, and then began to dance with Ryamon Hazukimaru in his hand. At the same time, the dragon pattern once again emitted a red light. Shoo, I saw two people, a Yasugawa Yumichika and the colored peacock appearing on the field. A Yasugawa Yumichika glanced at the figure of Gongjin, and immediately asked, Mr. Kurosaki, Miss Shihouin, how is the corner? I don't know, I asked Long Wei to take him to Captain Unoka. Shihouin Yoruichi said softly. Oh, if you say that, that bald boy lost to you. The glass-colored peacock looked at Hazukimaru and said, it's really good, my master is different. I'm full of bad water. Glass-colored. Peacock. Hazukimaru looked at the glass-colored peacock and said, I didn't expect that even you would succumb to those Shinigami. Don't say that, it's true, I did have some resentment towards the master at first. But when I was defeated by the master, I figured it out. In fact, what we are dissatisfied with is only the dissatisfaction with the master, but under the control of Muramasa, this dissatisfaction has turned into resentment, but it is still very strong resentment, so after hearing Muramasa's words, you did not hesitate to betray the master, and you too, Hazukimaru, you are only temporarily controlled. As long as you can surrender your own master's subordinates, then you will naturally understand. 500, HMPH, it's useless to talk too much. Hazukimaru directly swung the huge axe in his hand, then swung the big axe again and shouted, let's take this move from me first. Shoo shoo shoo. I saw that at this moment, Hazukimaru was surrounded by a few people wearing a black tight suit, even their faces were covered in black cloth, only a pair of eyes were exposed, it was obviously the one where the broken bees were. Shang Jun, who was in charge, was subdued with the short sword in hand, and they were all aiming each of the short swords at the key point of Hazukimaru, so that once Hazukimaru resisted, several short swords would immediately be stabbed. Body. In this case, although Hazukimaru was extremely upset, he no longer resisted. You are too careless, like your master, once you enter the battle, it is easy to ignore the situation around you. The voice of the bee came out, and then the bee came out wearing the captain of the 2nd Division, Haori, and glanced at Hazukimaru said, bring him back to the technical authority, captain of Kurosaki Mayuri. Damn, how could I be caught like this? Hazukimaru looked around at Shinigami who restrained him, but he didn't give up, looking for an opportunity to escape at any time. Soon Shinigami came over with a pair of shackles, and then forcibly put them on Hazukimaru. When Hazukimaru put on the shackles, his face changed, and his face became very ugly in an instant, because this pair of shackles was specially used to suppress Ryotsu. After anyone wears it, they will never be able to use Ryotsu again, and Hazukimaru is naturally reluctant to wear it, but the people around him have already expected it after he died, and there is a deep expression in his eyes. After Hazukimaru put it on, he couldn't use the Ryotsu in his body, but Hazukimaru didn't say much, but silently followed these Shing-jun away. Chapter 120. To Hazukimaru then the broken bee came to us, and then said respectfully, Mr. Kurosaki, Yoruichi-sama, thank you for your help, and bowed, and Shihouin Yoruichi stepped forward to help her and said, it's nothing, it's a small matter anyway, so it's all right. And he patted the shoulder of the bee very boldly, and then the bee said, then I'll take this Zanpakuto back. After that, he left. Shihouin Yoruichi fell into contemplation while watching the place where the broken bees disappeared. What's wrong? Ichigo asked her. Shihouin Yoruichi returned to his senses and said, it's nothing, I just remembered when I was the captain. Hearing this, Ichigo hugged her and said, would you like to take a look? After hearing this, Shihouin Yoruichi shook his head and said, no, everything that should be put down has been put down, so there is no need to go back. Hearing this, Ichigo also nodded, and then took her away in an instant. And Ichigo took Shihouin Yoruichi back to where they pitched their tent, and then left there to ignore what happened to Soul Society. A few days later, in the 4th Division, Arisawa Tatsuki and Uno Hinaru were fighting each other, and Uno Hinaru easily blocked Arisawa Tatsuki's moves. Arisawa Tatsuki was holding a bamboo sword. He charged directly towards Uno Hana, and chopped at her head, while Uhana took a step to the left very easily and dodged, and then hit the bamboo sword in Arisawa Tatsuki's hand. Dropped. Captain Eggflower, it's amazing, Arisawa Tatsuki said while stroking the beaten hand, and then Eggflower smiled and said, it's nothing, it's just that I have practiced kendo longer than you. Hear this, Arisawa Tatsuki also nodded. And then Katetsu Izan started to talk to Arisawa Tatsuki about kendo's insights and Arisawa Tatsuki's problems. Katetsu Izan was watching them all the time. While the egg was talking, 3 people came in. Arisawa Tatsuki just watched. He took a look and didn't speak, but continued to listen to the explanation of the egg, and the egg like flower didn't care, but continued to explain to Arisawa Tatsuki. And Arisawa Tatsuki naturally focused all his attention on the egg. Flowers are here. The 3 people who came, the first one was Madarei Mikaku with a big bald head, and next to him was the inseparable Yasugawa Yumichika. Apart from the 2 of them, there was only one left, wearing a beautiful feather suit. It was Yasugawa Yumichika's Zanpakuto glazed peacock. Hey, Long Gui, Madarei Mikaku shouted loudly as soon as he saw Arisawa Tatsuki. Arisawa Tatsuki hadn't spoken yet, and while he was speaking, 3 people came in. Arisawa Tatsuki hadn't spoken yet, and Katetsu Izan stepped forward to block. Madarei Mikaku said, please wait a moment, Madara Mezo Ryuki is cultivating, so please don't disturb for the time being. Cultivation? Madarei Mikaku was stunned for a moment, and then he saw Ujiwali and Ichigo staying together, and the 2 of them seemed to be talking about something, but Madarei Mikaku had no interest in this point. His interest is to fight against opponents stronger than himself, but this time he is not for fighting, he is here to get his Zanpakuto back. Although it is said that his Zanpakuto is in the 12th Division, he has also been there, it's just that he was chased back. Although he was angry, the final result was that he and Yasugawa Yumichika were beaten by Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Everyone in Jingling Court knows that Captain Unohana Retsu and Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri are at odds. The reason is that the 4th Division is a medical division, while the 12th Division is a research division. Riverwater, but in fact, Kurotsuchi Mayuri is most interested in poisoning except for research. It can be seen from the poison that he made his Zanpakuto, so he and Captain Unohana Retsu are extremely wrong. That's why Madarame Mikaku came to Unohana Retsu, hoping to ask Unohana Retsu captain to help get Hazukumaru back, but speaking of it, there is no way to do it, who made the captain of the 11th Division Zaraki Kenpachi run away from nowhere. I know. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly, advertisement. Egg Jawali nodded slightly and said, okay, then Long Gui, let's practice right away. I will not fight you with all my strength, but with similar strength as you, so if you want to block me, and can only block me after learning, so the time of the battle is set when you block me. I see. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, however, Captain Eggflower, if you're training, just wait for a while. Without waiting for Eggflower to answer, Arisawa Tatsuki turned and walked towards Madarame Mikaku and Yasugawa Yumachika. Yo, Yijao, your injury is still not healed, why did you come here? Arisawa Tatsuki greeted Madarame Mikaku from a distance. You should rest now, and your Zanpakuto has not been caught? Don't mention this, I'm angry when I say it. Madarame Mikaku said with an angry face. Long Gui, you shouldn't be cultivating now, I want to talk to Captain Ujiwa about something, can you? Captain Unoka. Arisawa Tatsuki read, then shook his head slightly and said, I don't know, just ask yourself. Is that so? Madarame Mikaku recited a sentence, then waved his hand and said, that's it, Long Gui, I'll go and ask first. After speaking, she ran towards the Eggflower. Wait, a corner. Arisawa Tatsuki pulled Madarame Mikaku and said, your face is very wrong, what happened? It's no big deal. Long Gui, Madarame Mikaku said casually. I'm going to find Captain Unoka. Madarame Mikaku walked away. Yasugawa Yumachika immediately followed, but Arisawa Tatsuki didn't have time to stop Yasugawa Yumachika, but caught the glass-colored peacock who was following at the end. Hey, glass-colored peacock, what happened? Arisawa Tatsuki looked at Madarame Mikaku and said, one corner's behavior is strange. It's not a big deal, the colored peacock said while looking in the mirror. Yesterday, he was defeated by Hazukumaru, and he was knocked out directly. During the battle, if he fainted, then obviously the battle has already been lost. Needless to say, you should know the importance of the previous battle. The glass-colored peacock said with a slight pause, of course, this is not the most important thing. Madarame Mikaku is not an ordinary person, even if it is a battle. It won't be the case if he loses, but the most important thing is that after he lost the battle, Hazukumaru was caught by the captain of the 2nd Division, Shobei, who sent Hazukumaru to the 12th Division. I know. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, I know everything that happened, but it doesn't seem to be a problem, right? The 12th Division is the Technology Development Bureau, and the 12th Division captain, Kurotsuchi Mayuri, is a technology developer. The director of the bureau, this time Zanpakuto suddenly left the mutiny, which is probably a very interesting thing for Kurotsuchi Mayuri. So after catching Zanpakuto, it's no problem for Captain Broken Bee to hand him over to the 12th Division Shadow? Advertisement. This was originally no problem, but today Madarame Mikaku went to the 12th Division to meet Hazukumaru, but was blocked by the 12th Division. The colored peacock said, in the end, it was directly blocked by the 12th Division. The captain of the squad, Kurotsuchi Mayuri, called it out. From the words of Kurotsuchi Mayuri, the Zanpakuto who was recaptured has not changed except the sword soul has become an independent entity, and Hazukumaru is the sword that has not been recaptured. Soul, he seems to have received hypnosis and the like, but Kurotsuchi Mayuri said that the time is too short to fully find out, so he still needs further research. But Madarame Mikaku doesn't think Hazukumaru is used as experimental material, so it is with Kurotsuchi Mayuri got into an argument, and was kicked out by Kurotsuchi Mayuri, and the captain and vice-captain of the 11th team still don't know where they are, so after thinking about it, Madarame Mikaku can only come over and ask Unohana Retsu. I see. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly, then shook his head and said, the glass-colored peacock, you go and tell the corner, it's useless, even Captain Izuki can't help him get Hazukumaru back. Yes, I'm afraid even Captain Unohana would agree to hand Hazukumaru to the 12th Division for research. Well, the glass-colored peacock was slightly taken aback, although he guessed that even coming to Unohana Retsu would be in vain. What he thought was that Unohana Retsu couldn't get Hazukumaru back from Kurotsuchi Mayuri. It's very simple. First of all, Kurotsuchi Mayuri is the director of the Technology Development Bureau. It can be said that he is a scientist. Arisawa Tatsuki said softly. Every scientist is a genius, but you must know that geniuses and lunatics are just only a step away. Especially these genius scientists, they have a common characteristic, that is, they are crazy about research. But to conduct research, the most important thing is to study materials. A real scientist, if he has a knowledge of one thing, if they are interested, they will not give up unless they fully understand one thing, and their persistence in researching materials is terrifying. Now, the revolt of Zanpakuto must have made him very emotional. I'm interested, so unless he fully understands what happened when he met Zanpakuto, or else, let alone Captain Unoka, even if the Captain Yamamoto Genryuzai Shogun speaks in person, he won't change his mind. It makes sense. The glass-colored peacock nodded slightly. Obviously, although Kurotsuchi Mayuri doesn't look very good, he is definitely a real scientist. Arisawa Tatsuki nodded slightly and said, We don't have much time right now, and we don't know when Aizen will attack the present world. At that time, if there is no Soul Society's power, the present world will not be able to stop Aizen's attack at all, so, we must go to the present world as early as possible, and the sooner we go, the more time we have to prepare, and it is better to wait for work than to rush to fight. So in order to be able to go to the present world as soon as possible, then Zanpakuto's affairs must be done. Please, quickly solve it. Only by solving this Zanpakuto mutiny can all the Shinigami fully recover their strength, and after this Zanpakuto mutiny, some talented Shinigami fear. I am afraid that the strength will also have a lot of physique, but only in this way can I have a better chance of winning when facing the attack of Aizen in the future, and it is easy to say that it is easy to solve the rebellion of Zanpakuto, and it is difficult to say it. But the hardest part is that we don't know what happened to Zanpakuto to betray us and want to. If this mystery is solved, then it is the best and fastest to find Zanpakuto, so Hazukimaru in the hands of Kurotsuchi Miyuri will let Kurotsuchi Miyuri find out the reason for Zanpakuto's betrayal in a short time, and then Kurotsuchi Miyuri will be there as a way to help all the Shinigami get Zanpakuto back. And if there is no Hazukimaru, then there is only one way to solve Zanpakuto, then, just like us, find our own Zanpakuto, then defeat Zanpakuto, and make Zanpakuto submit to us again, but this kind of thing, except for a few Shinigami can do it. How many others can do it? So based on this consideration, Captain Unohana Retsu. Isn't the choice already obvious? HMPH, it's really troublesome, said the glass-colored peacock, then turned and ran in the direction of Madarame Makaku and Yasugawa Yumachika. Arisawa Tatsuki shook his head slightly and said, although I don't like Kurotsuchi Miyuri, this guy is indeed a rare genius as a scientist. Chapter 121. Meeting Yamada Hanataro. No, Unohana Retsu shook his head slightly, looked at Madarame Makaku in front of him and shook his head slightly. I can help you with other things, but Madara Musan, I don't agree with this matter. What? Madarame Makaku was slightly taken aback. He knew that Unohana Retsu was at odds with Kurotsuchi Miyuri. He originally thought he could ask Unohana Retsu for help, but he didn't expect that he would be rejected by her just as he guessed. Why, Captain Unohana? Madarame Makaku asked immediately. Madara Messen, you should be very clear about the current situation. Since Captain Kurotsuchi Miyuri has left Hazukimaru in the 12th Division, it means that Hazukimaru must be helpful in solving the mystery of Zanpakuto's mutiny, so I will not go. The 12th Division and Madara Messen seats. I hope you can stop going to the 12th Division until the research of Captain Kurotsuchi Miyuri is completed. Although you should use your Zanpakuto as experimental material, but in the current situation, I can only say sorry. But why? Madarame Makaku wanted to say something else. At this time, Katetsu Izan, the vice captain of the 4th Division, walked in from outside, looked at Unohana Retsu and said, Captain, the vice captain of Neon Dream is here to pick up the captain. Behind Katetsu Izan, Neon Meng walked out with a blank face, looked at Unohana Retsu and saluted slightly. Captain Unohana, Captain Kurotsuchi Miyuri let me pick you up. Unohana Retsu nodded slightly, stood up, came to Neon Meng's side, and said, I see, Yangyan, I'll leave it to you here. Yes, Captain, Katetsu Izan replied. Unohana Retsu nodded 500 and followed Neon Dream. At this time Katetsu Izan looked at Unohana Retsu's back and shouted, Captain, you don't have to go, other people can go in your place. No, Unohana Retsu shook his head slightly and said, indeed, other people can also go in my place, but the effect is definitely not as good. We are short of time now, so we must reduce the time as much as possible. After speaking, Unohana Retsu stopped talking directly. Neon Meng left. Captain Unohana, Team Unohana. Madarame Makaku shouted behind Unohana Retsu. Yasugawa Yumachika stepped forward to stop Madarame Makaku, looked at Katetsu Izan and asked, Vice Captain Toru, what are Captain Unohana and Vice Captain Neon Dream going to do? Advertisement, Captain Kurotsuchi Miyuri said before that the captain must be checked, saying that the captain may be helpful to his Gansu, Katetsu Izan said. So Captain Unohana is going to the 12th Division. What? Captain Unohana himself? Madarame Makaku said in surprise. So that's how it is, the glass-colored peacock said, it's just like what Arisawa Tatsuki said. Same as what Long Gui said. Yasugawa Yumachika was stunned for a moment, then looked at the glass-colored peacock and said, speaking of which, you seem to have been with Ichigo for a while. That's right. The glass-colored peacock nodded slightly. I talked to her a lot, and he said that according to the current situation, Unohana Retsu would not agree to go to the 12th Division to get the ghost. CGBE, Tumaru back. Although he said a lot of reasons, but he did not fully believe it, but now it seems that he is right at all. On the other side, because of the intense training, Arisawa Tatsuki was swaying profusely, and the smell of sweat was spreading. Arisawa Tatsuki hesitated for a moment, turned and walked towards his room, because the wound on his body had already stopped bleeding, so Arisawa Tatsuki planned to wash off the odor of sweat on his body first. After all, the 4th Division is a medical division, and the number of women is much higher than that of men. After all, women are more or less sympathetic, and men are more or less happy and grudge. In this way, the number of women who join the 4th Division will be several times more than that of men, plus the captain of the 4th Division. The fact that both captains and vice-captains are women has contributed to this trend. Even now, there are several times more women than men in the 4th Division. And Arisawa Tatsuki is also a girl who loves to be clean, so she still intends to clean up the odor of sweat on her body first. Miss Arisawa. A familiar voice suddenly came out in the distance. Arisawa Tatsuki was stunned for a moment, turned his head slightly, and saw a man in a death tyrant costume running over. Arisawa Tatsuki looked at this man for a moment, then showed a slight smile and said, "Yo, it's been a long time." "It's gone, Hanataro. You seem to be doing well." This man is the 7th seed of the 4th division, Yamada Hanataro. Before Arisawa Tatsuki broke into the jingling garden to save Rukia, he held this guy hostage. "Yes, thanks to you." Yamada Hanataro smiled and nodded. "Ever since I heard that Miss Arisawa you successfully rescued Miss Rukia, I haven't had a chance to thank you. My purpose at that time was to save Rukia, so I will save Rukia with or without you," Arisawa Tatsuki said softly. Then Arisawa Tatsuki patted Yamada Hanataro on the shoulder and said, "Speaking of which, Hanataro, you came just in time. I happen to have something I want to ask you for." "Advertisement, please." Yamada Hanataro was stunned for a moment. Arisawa Tatsuki smiled and nodded and said, "Well, I just trained, and there are quite a few wounds on my body. Although the bleeding has stopped, it has not been treated yet. I originally planned to go first. Take a shower and then get someone to deal with it, but it's up to you now, Hanataro." No wonder I saw Miss Arisawa wearing a tattered death tyrant, so that's how it is. Yamada Hanataro nodded slightly. "If it's other things, I don't have much confidence, but if it's treatment, then, please leave it to me, Miss Arisawa." Yamada Hanataro glanced at the injuries on Arisawa Tatsuki's body and said, "Give me a moment, and I will definitely heal all your injuries within an hour. Then I'll leave it to you." Ichigo nodded slightly and said, "Let's go, I've been living in the 4th Division's quarters recently." Arisawa Tatsuki turned and walked towards the 4th Division's place to take care of the wounded. "Really? Great," Yamada Hanataro said excitedly, then immediately followed Arisawa Tatsuki. Yamada Hanataro looked at Arisawa Tatsuki's figure and asked cautiously, "Miss Arisawa, when you are free, you can tell me something in the world." Arisawa Tatsuki was stunned for a moment, and Yamada Hanataro immediately said in a panic, "It doesn't matter if you don't have time." "Haha. In this world?" Arisawa Tatsuki said a little, and then said, "Hanataro, this world is not a good place. There are some intolerable things in some dark corners, and this is only in some corners. Some disgusting scene is even placed directly in front of you, but you can only watch it, but there is nothing you can do." Yamada Hanataro is just timid and slow to react. Not only is he not stupid, on the contrary, he is also very smart. It can be seen from his timid personality that he can become the 7th seed of the 4th team. Although he is the 7th seed, he can to be an officer is itself a manifestation of strength. Yamada Hanataro seemed to understand what Arisawa Tatsuki said, and he asked cautiously, "Is it darker than Hōgyoku Mundo, 35? Arisawa Tatsuki shook his head slightly and said, "I haven't been to Hōgyoku Mundo. I don't know what Hōgyoku Mundo is like, so I can't compare, but in this world, some people's hearts are better than those who have lost their hearts to be dark, and these people often have power or financial resources that ordinary people do not have. Fake will eat people's souls, and these people will ruin others' homes, which is more disgusting than false behavior." "Is that so?" Yamada Hanataro said slightly, his eyes dimmed. Maybe in his eyes, the world is a very beautiful place, but in fact, the world is completely inferior to Soul Society. At least the general summoning souls living in the Soul Society are poor, but they are very harmonious with each other, and the families in the Soul Society did not know each other from the beginning, they just got along and formed a family, and in this world, everyone sweeping the snow in front of your door, don't care about the frost on the roof of others. This sentence explains everything. But the world is not all darkness. Arisawa Tatsuki saw that Yamada Hanataro was in a low mood and said, "There are many places in the world that are full of light and hope, although there are very few, but occasionally it will appear, and every time it appears, my heart is always warm. Please sit on the bed, Miss Arisawa." Yamada Hanataro followed Arisawa Tatsuki to the room, saying that the room was actually just an ordinary dormitory with only a few beds and some daily necessities. Arisawa Tatsuki put down the thunder on his body, while Yamada Hanataro stood beside Arisawa Tatsuki, and immediately gathered Ryotsu in his hands and placed it on the wound on Arisawa Tatsuki's back. Chapter 122. Rescue Captain 1. On the other hand, Ichigo came to help Soul Society because of Shihouin Yoruichi's request. "Okay, in this case, the personnel are all here. Captain Unohana, you can assign tasks." Ichigo glanced at the 5 people who came to the 4th Division. Kyoraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki, Broken B, Komamura Sajin, Hitsugaya Dashiro, and then said. Jashiro Yukitaki opened his mouth at this time, except for Captain Zaraki who has not returned so far, the missing captain and Captain Kuchiki, and Captain Kurathushi Mayuri who is only interested in research. The other captains have already come. Unohana Retsu nodded slightly and said, "This time, we have gathered everyone, but there is only one thing. Everyone knows that Zanpakuto suddenly betrayed and attacked the master, and now he has found a way to regain Zanpakuto, that is to meet his own Zanpakuto. And then use the battle to make him submit. This has been confirmed. The vice captain of the 6th Division Aburai Renji has successfully subdued his own Zanpakuto, and just 2 days ago, the 5th seed of the 11th Division Iyasugawa Yumachika also he reconquered his own Zanpakuto. but there were also failures, that is, the third seed of the 11th team. He was defeated by his own Zanpakuto Hazukimaru, because of the rescue of Mr. Kurosaki. He was only seriously injured in a coma and did not die in battle. In the end, Hazukimaru was caught in time because of the appearance of Captain Broken B. Captain Ujiwa, we already know all this, you made us anxious, shouldn't you be saying this? Broken B said. If so, please allow me to retire first, I still have a lot of things to deal with. Captain Broken B. Ichigo smiled and said, wait a moment, please? Yoruichi will be here soon. What? Lord Yoruichi. Bumblebee's face reddened, her figure flashed, and she saw that she had already sat down in her seat again. Ichigo smiled lightly, revealing a slight smile, and the others who wanted to leave also stopped, and they all knew that Yoruichi was out to investigate information. And now that he is back, it proves that he must have obtained some information. After a while, I'm sorry, because my whole body was sweating just now, so as soon as I came back, I couldn't wait to take a shower, making everyone wait for a long time. And when he said this, he looked at me very sarcastically. Yoruichi took off her coat because she had just taken a bath. She is now wearing the same clothes as Xiaobi. To be precise, Yingguo is Shibi imitating her clothes. The only difference is that, the outside of the Broken Bee is wearing Captain Haori, but Yoruichi does not have it. Yoruichi-sama. Broby saw Yoruichi and immediately stood up and her eyes glowed, but fortunately she still remembered that she was the captain of the 2nd division, so she stood there and didn't say anything. Yo, Broken Bee. Yoruichi said hello, then came to Yunohana Retsu's side, looked at the other people and said, okay, I won't say much about the gossip, I'll just talk about what I've been investigating these days. Let's hear the news. After a slight pause, Yoruichi said, ever since Ichigo and I came to Soul Society from this world, we have been investigating, and these days we have traveled all over the Jingling Court, investigating the entire Jingling Court. The situation of Lingting, of course, now everyone knows the situation of Jinglingting, I will not say more, my purpose is to find Zanpakuto's lair, but I have not been able to find any traces, but just recently, it was when Madarei Mikaku and Yasugawa Yumichika fought their own Zanpakuto, and Ichigo and I finally got some news. Shihouin Yoruichi didn't panic at all when he said this. Shihouin Yoruichi and Ichigo didn't investigate at all when they first came to Soul Society, but in the world of two people. And Ichigo came here because Shihouin Yoruichi used his all-out effort to get Ichigo to agree, so his whole body was covered in sweat. Advertisement, what is it? Zanpakuto's lair. Broken Bee said immediately, unintentionally cooperating with Yoruichi. I don't know. Yoruichi shook his head slightly and said, Zanpakuto's lair is very hidden. Although we both found a cave, after a little exploration, I still can't confirm whether that cave is Zanpakuto's cave, but whether it is or not it doesn't matter much, because the two of us found something in this cave, so we rushed back immediately, gathered everyone together, and went to that cave together. Is there anything in the cave? Jashiro Yukitaki asked, have you found anything that you can't give up, Yoruichi? Let's put it this way, I think whether this cave is Zanpakuto's lair or not, we must enter at once. Yoruichi said firmly, and when we left there in secret, it seemed that someone was following us, we think it is very likely it's another Zanpakuto, but it doesn't mean to fight us. If we enter again, then it is possible that soon they have set a trap and are waiting for us to drill, but even if we know that Zanpakuto may already be here there is a trap set in the cave, we all have to go once. There is no room for rejection. Yoruichi's words made everyone stunned for a moment, and then they all turned their attention to Yoruichi. Yoruichi took a deep breath and said, it feels like my investigation, I found out that the missing captain, Yamamoto Genyuzai Shigekuni, is in that cave, and it seems that he can be restrained by a seal. What? Genryuze-sensei, 35 Jashiro was surprised. Kyoraku Shunsui pulled the hat on his head slightly and said, I didn't expect the old man to be sealed. Damn. How dare these Zanpakuto treat Genryuze-sama like this? Komamura-sajin suddenly slapped the table angrily, but Komamura-sajin, who had just clapped his palm, couldn't help the pain in his shoulder for a while. Captain Komamura, your injury is not yet healed, so please take care of yourself, Yunohana Retsu said. My little injury is not a big problem, but I didn't expect Genryuze-sama to be restrained. Komamura-sajin said slightly, no wonder the captain-in-chief hasn't appeared these days. Komamura-sajin said he stood up and said, since the whereabouts of the captain have been discovered, what are you waiting for? Go see the captain and rescue him. Advertisement, yes, the commander-in-chief really needs to be rescued. Yunohana Retsu nodded slightly and said, but we can't just rush over like this. The enemy has probably set a trap and is waiting for us to step on it. We can't just rush over like this. We must discuss some countermeasures carefully, and since this cave is the cave of the Zanpakuto SEAL commander, the defense must be very strict. I am afraid that there will be a lot of Zanpakuto and the situation will be very critical. I am afraid war is inevitable. At that time, everyone should be more careful. Katakana middle dot katakana middle dot katakana middle dot seeking flowers katakana middle dot. Don't worry, Captain Unoka. Kyoraku Shunsui stood up and smiled and said, as for the traps, according to Zanpakuto's historical style, I think these traps are also ambush. If it was an ambush, then it would be great, Hitsugaya Dashiro said, then glanced at everyone present and said, I think everyone wants to take back their Zanpakuto. Kyoraku Shunsui nodded slightly and said, of course, and according to Zanpakuto's actions, if we dive into that cave, Zanpakuto will definitely come out to obstruct them, and the one who obstructs everyone may be their Zanpakuto. When you think of the time to do this, everyone should know it. Respective Zanpakuto. Broken Bee said with a smile on his face. I want to gradually see what my Zanpakuto will look like. Please be vigilant. Seeing their careless expressions, Shihouin Yoruichi immediately said, Zanpakuto's power is very strong, and they were originally born from their own souls, so you will. Zanpakuto can all use Shikai. Even the Zanpakuto of the captains are able to Bankai. After Zanpakuto's betrayal, they can also carry out Bankai. And because of Zanpakuto's betrayal, the Zanpakuto in your hands becomes an ordinary knife and cannot be liberated. So in the face of Zanpakuto's betrayal those Zanpakuto times. We were actually at a disadvantage from the beginning, but Zanpakuto would not have any mercy on us, so if you want to defeat Zanpakuto and regain Zanpakuto's ability, then you must first understand Zanpakuto's dissatisfaction with you at this point, only by eliminating Zanpakuto's dissatisfaction, and then using his emotions to make Zanpakuto re-remember the fetters he saw with him. Only in this way can Zanpakuto be able to reign in Zanpakuto. Oh, Yoruichi, you're right, Jashiro Yukitaki said, everyone should know their own abilities, so naturally, we also know our Zanpakuto's abilities, so when you go to rescue the captain, everyone must be careful, absolutely don't act alone. I suggest that when you act, at least 2 or more people should be in a group, so that you can at least take care of each other. Forget it, that's it. Yunohana Retsu sighed slightly and then said, okay, since it's absolute, then everyone will go back and prepare, and the Soul Society can't be without the captain, so 3 hours later, we immediately set off to rescue the chief captain. Captain Komamura, after all of us have left, I have to ask you here, can Captain Komamura ask you to stay here? Yes, I understand. Komamura-Sajin nodded slightly and said, although I also want to go to rescue the captain, my injury has not fully recovered, and if I go, I'm afraid it will only be a hindrance for you, so I still don't go. Okay, and staying here, I can not only let you have no worries, but I can also take a good rest by the way. Yunohana Retsu nodded slightly, then looked at the sky, and then nodded slightly. Okay. Then everyone, it's getting late, go back separately, make some final preparations, and then set off. Yes, all the captains responded and then left. Chapter 123. Rescue Captain 2. And when Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi came to the room prepared for them, Shihouin Yoruichi asked, thank you very much, Ichigo. Hearing this, Ichigo was very dissatisfied and hugged her and spanked her ***. He said, I've already said that, we don't need to talk about this between the two of us. Then he hugged her and lay on the bed, while Shihouin Yoruichi put his head on Ichigo's chest and said, Ichigo, why do you suddenly want to help them again? It's not because you tried your best, or I wouldn't come to help them. Ichigo teased her and said to her, and Shihouin Yoruichi smacked Ichigo's chest very shyly, and then closed his eyes quietly listening to Ichigo's heartbeat. When Ichigo saw this scene, he hugged her tightly and lay down quietly. And 3 hours later, in front of the 4th Division's quarters, Yunohana Retsu, Jashiro Yukitaki, Kyoraku Shunsui, 503. B. Hitsugaya Dashiro, Komamura-Sajin, Yoruichi, Ichigo, 8 people have assembled, and of course, some vice-captains. After all, these captains are leaving, and they have to speak to these vice-captains, and Arisawa Tatsuki didn't come, because the egg flower lie told her to exercise in the 4th Division, so Arisawa Tatsuki had to stay where? Okay, it looks like you are all ready. Yoruichi looked at the other people and said slightly, okay, then let's not waste time, let's go directly, everyone must follow. A wicked smile appeared on Yoruichi's face, and then Yoruichi's figure suddenly disappeared in place. After, Yoruichi-sama. Shobei saw Yoruichi's figure disappearing in place, a little under his feet, the whole figure also disappeared. At the same time, Ichigo smiled slightly, raised his feet slightly, and the whole figure disappeared instantly. On the buildings in the distance, the figures of Yoruichi, Broken Bee and Ichigo kept flashing. What a troublesome guy. Hitsugaya Dashiro said softly, and immediately chased in the direction of Yoruichi and Ichigo. Of course, Hitsugaya Dashiro didn't plan to chase with his legs, and saw the figure of Hitsugaya Dashiro who had just run a step. It had already disappeared, and behind the Broken Bee, the figure of Hitsugaya Dashiro appeared and followed closely behind the Broken Bee. Alala, you are really energetic, it's great to be young. Kyoraku Shunsui sighed inexplicably, and then his figure flashed and disappeared in place, chasing after Yoruichi and the others. It really looks like a child, Jashiro Yukitaki said with a slight smile, and then the figure also disappeared in place, and when it reappeared, it had already appeared beside Kyoraku Shunsui. Yunohana Retsu looked at Katetsu Izan with a smile and said, then I'll leave it to you here, Yuone. Yes, Captain, don't worry. I'll take care of everything. Katetsu Izan said immediately, passing the Zanpakuto in his hand to Yunohana Retsu. Captain, your Zanpakuto. Advertisement. Yunohana Retsu nodded slightly, took Zanpakuto, and then slowly walked towards the direction Yoruichi and the others were leaving. Although Yunohana Retsu seemed to be slow, but after each step Yunohana Retsu stepped out gently, the voice always appeared in the distance, as if shrinking into an inch. Hey, Yoruichi, is that cave inside the Jingling Garden or outside the Jingling Garden? Jashiro Yukitaki asked softly, looking at Yoruichi in front of him. It's in the courtyard. Yoruichi's entire body suddenly flew out. Yoruichi continued. Ichigo, you probably don't know. Jingling Court doesn't sound very big, but in fact, Jingling Court is not very big. Small, even if I am moving at full speed, it will take a lot of time to make a complete circle, and many places in Jingling Garden are not inhabited by Shinigami, but forests and cliffs, such as Bipolar Hill. It's just a cliff, so if you want to hide, it's the best in these mountains, and I found the cave where the captain was sealed on a mountain. Ichigo nodded slightly, and Jashiro Yukitake said, in that case, these Zanpakuto never actually left. Of course, Yoruichi said, have you forgotten? Jashiro, the Jingling Garden is surrounded by a circular defensive cover, and since the Zanpakuto mutiny, the Jingling Garden has been closed. The passage with the Soul Society, the passage is guarded by Shinigami. Has there been news that Shinigami at the passage has been attacked, but Zanpakuto has always appeared in Jingling Court, so obviously Zanpakuto and the others must be in Jingling Court. As for the location, I have only found the cave where the captain was sealed. As for whether it is the lair of the Zanpakuto, I don't know yet. But I have already investigated the surrounding terrain. There is no place to hide and live, except for the cave where the captain is imprisoned in front of him. Moreover, if the captain is imprisoned in other places, then it is necessary to allocate troops to take care of the captain, and the lair. Naturally, people need to be guarded. In this case, it is better to directly detain the captain in the Bite's lair, unless the two locations are very close and can go to rescue in time, but since they can become their lair, then it must be a very hidden place. It is not difficult to find such a place in Jingling Court, but it is not easy to find two places that are very close. At least, when I and Ikazuki traveled almost all over the Jingling Garden, and we didn't find such a place. Is that so? Hitsugaya Toshiro nodded slightly and said, that is to say, this cave is not only the cave of the Seal Commander, but it may also be the lair of those Zanpakuto. Is it possible that all the rebellious Zanpakuto are here? No, that doesn't seem to be the case. Yoruichi shook his head slightly and said, I have investigated with Ichigo, and Zanpakuto also seems to be divided into levels. This division is based on strength. Everyone knows that Zanpakuto also follows suit. Shinigami's strength has improved, and even if the Zanpakuto of the captains are betrayed, they still overwhelm the other Zanpakuto. Of course, there are also some Zanpakuto of the vice-captains. As for the Zanpakuto of other Shinigami, I have not seen it. So inside 1.4, although the number of Zanpakuto is not large, they are all powerful Zanpakuto, and your Zanpakuto must be there too, so the situation may be very dangerous at that time. Everyone be prepared. Looks like this, the situation seems to become troublesome. Kyoraku Shunsui said with a slight smile. Yoruichi, how far is it? It doesn't take long, it's coming soon, Yoruichi said with a smile on his face. Don't be too impatient. Then, after walking for a minute, okay, here we are. Yoruichi's figure suddenly stopped, and then stood under a huge mountain wall, and at the moment when Yoruichi stopped, Unohana Retsu, Broken B, Jashiro Yukitake, Kyoraku Shunsui, Hitsugaya Toshiro and the others also fell behind Yoruichi and Ichigo. Chapter 124. Rescue Captain 3. Is this the cave? Unohana Retsu asked, looking at the mountain wall. Because in front of the group is just a mountain wall, there is no cave. Yoruichi nodded slightly and said, it's here that we found the traces of Zanpakuto, and then we found out that the captain was actually sealed inside. Yoruichi stepped forward slightly, and in front of her was the mountain wall, but Yoruichi directly he hit it, and the moment Yoruichi hit it, Yoruichi's entire injured body melted directly into the mountain wall. I see. Unohana Retsu said softly, do you use this kind of blinding method to block other people's investigation? Let's go in too. After saying that, Unohana Retsu stepped forward and stretched a hand into the mountain wall. After feeling it for a while, he said, I see, does it still have the effect of sound insulation? No wonder Yoruichi didn't move at all after entering. Unohana Retsu walked directly into the mountain wall. And Ichigo also went in, because the sight has not yet adjusted, so at first Ichigo's eyes were dark. Ichigo directly stretched out his hand and grabbed it. Originally, Ichigo thought that he could touch the rock or he would feel empty, but Ichigo was unexpected. Yes, Ichigo directly touched a soft mass, even Ichigo couldn't hold it with one hand, and these 26 were very familiar. Ah, so Ichigo is so lecherous, I haven't shown it before, I've been deceived by you. Yoruichi grabbed Ichigo's wrist and said with a smirk, but he didn't take Ichigo's hand from his chest. Ichigo was stunned for a moment, watching his hand grab Yoruichi's left chest, hesitating for a moment. Ichigo desperately wanted to retract, but Yoruichi held Ichigo's hand tightly, making Ichigo unable to retract at all. Suddenly, Ichigo disappeared in front of Yoruichi with a sound of shoo, and outside the mountain wall, Jashiro Yukitake and others who were just about to enter suddenly appeared in Ichigo, and Ichigo was a little stunned. Did something happen? Mr. Kurosaki? Jashiro Yukitake looked at Ichigo and asked with some doubts, are there any enemies inside? What happened to Yoruichi and Captain Unohana? Nothing, Ichigo said calmly, and then Ichigo continued to walk towards the mountain wall. Ichigo's words and deeds made Jashiro Yukitake and the other group full of doubts, but they knew from Ichigo's actions that it was about Ichigo's private affairs, so Ichigo didn't say anything, and they were embarrassed to ask. Naturally, Ichigo knew their doubts, but Ichigo didn't want to explain anything at all, and it was just a matter of Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi. And why does Ichigo do this? Because Ichigo doesn't want others to see his intimacy with his own woman, so this is the reaction. And Ichigo, who was about to enter the cave, suddenly saw Shihouin Yoruichi's head leaking out of it, and then said coquettishly, "Don't be angry, Ichigo." After being stunned for a moment, Ichigo burst out and said, "Yoruichi, you..." When I was about to say something, I saw the current situation, so Ichigo stopped talking. Advertisement, he. Yoruichi looked at Ichigo seductively and said, "Reward at night." This. Ichigo didn't know what to say for a while, and the captains next to Ichigo looked around as if they didn't hear anything, and then I said into Shihouin Yoruichi's ear, "Clean up you at night." Then he flicked Shihouin Yoruichi's forehead and went in. Shihouin Yoruichi felt the happy light in his eyes and entered again. At this time, the other captains, Jashiro Yukitaki, Kyoraku Shunsui and others also entered the dodge. Captain Unohana, the passages below are many and complicated, but each of them can lead to the seal of the chief captain. Shihouin Yoruichi shouted loudly when he and Ichigo left. Then leave the others to Unohana. "Captain, you have come to assign tasks." This. Unohana Retsu said with a smile. "The purpose of coming here this time is to rescue your excellency the chief captain, not to play, but to abandon the task of rescuing the chief captain." But unfortunately, Ichigo, the two Shihouin Yoruichi had already run away and did not hear the words and did not see Unohana Retsu's expression, but a few people such as Jashiro Yukitaki who had just entered but heard these words, although they did not see Unohana Retsu's expression, but just hearing those words shocked them for a while. There's nothing wrong with those words, but Unohana Retsu said them in that tone, and that's a big problem. After Ichigo and Shihouin Yoruichi left, they walked towards Yamamoto far away from Liaojai very easily. People who didn't know thought that Ichigo and the two were traveling, but Shihouin Yoruichi kept holding Ichigo's arm and said, "Just spare me this time, Ichigo?" She said in a very coquettish tone, so Ichigo also softened and said, "Forget it this time, but don't have another time." Shihouin Yoruichi nodded quickly upon hearing this. Walking and walking, they came to a very open place. There were many stone pillars in front of them, and below the stone pillars was a bottomless abyss. Ichigo was standing on the last flat platform. Opposite them, very far there is also a platform at the distance. "Yoruichi, this is..." Ichigo opened his mouth while looking in front of him, while Shihouin Yoruichi kept holding on to Ichigo's arm. "I don't know what's going on." Yoruichi shook his head slightly, looked in front of him and said, "It was like this when I came. I just don't know if these were originally there or if they were made by Zanpakuto. However, after passing through these stone pillars, after walking for a long distance, it is the location of the Seal Commander." After Ichigo and Yoruichi of Saifeng 503 came here, Ichigo did not go in, but Shihouin Yoruichi went in. Ichigo nodded slightly, then stepped forward and glanced at the whole stone pillar forest. If this is natural, then naturally there is nothing, but if it was dug by those Zanpakuto, then I am afraid that this cave is full of various traps. "That's right." Yoruichi nodded slightly and said, "Under normal circumstances, if the Zanpakuto created this place, then since they have the energy to create such a big bottomless pit, they will naturally have the energy to create other traps, but the strange thing is that, I once swaggered in, didn't hide my traces, even made a lot of noise on purpose, but no one appeared in the whole cave, and no trap was launched. In this case, it seems that they did not set a trap." Ichigo said softly, and then looked at Yoruichi. Ichigo suddenly noticed that Yoruichi's eyes were a little flickering. Ichigo was stunned for a moment, and then nodded vaguely. "Forget it, let's go, Yoruichi. No matter how much danger lies ahead, we must go and rescue the captain, the old man." Yoruichi's mouth showed a slight smile and nodded. "Okay, then let's go." Shihouin Yoruichi didn't let go of Ichigo's arm from beginning to end. Chapter 125 Rescue Captain 4 Ichigo, Yoruichi. Two people suddenly jumped to one stone pillar, and then jumped towards the other stone pillar. Their goal was naturally the opposite platform. Just after the two of Yoruichi and Ichigo walked halfway, they jumped up again, towards different stone pillars, but at this moment, suddenly there was a sound of breaking through the air behind Ichigo and the two of them. At this time, the two of them were in the air, and suddenly the sound of breaking the air was clearly coming towards the two of them. Seeing that the two were about to be hit, suddenly Ichigo, Yoruichi, the two were in the air. They all twisted their bodies forcibly, and a cold light of shoo 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 brushed past them. The two of them avoided the cold light at the same time. At the moment of boom, they saw Ichigo, Yoruichi, all the stone pillars in front of them. All were destroyed, and the two of them had lost their foothold, but at this moment, the two of them had already seen clearly what that cold light was. After a turn in the air, now is the time when the old power has been exhausted and the new power has not yet been generated. The strength of Ichigo and Yoruichi is very terrible now, so it is very easy to use the power to reach the intact stone pillar in the air, while Yoruichi has never left Ichigo's side, and Ichigo came to a stone pillar. Ichigo held the handle of the knife and waved it suddenly. In an instant, a blade appeared on a stone pillar behind Ichigo. With a swipe sound, the stone pillar was directly cut into two pieces, and a figure flew out. Ichigo turned around and looked at the hilt, and the figure's hand was waved again, several times in a row, only to see a sword press appearing in front of the figure again out of thin air, and cut it directly. Dang dang, the figure held a saw in his hand, the wheel and the attached chain blocked several times in a row. Although it was blocked, it was still pushed away by the sword. Then it hit the rock wall and fell down. He immediately got up again and jumped up. A ghost-like man landed on the stone pillar, with red hair and a well-developed body wrapped around a black cloth. His right hand held a saw wheel, while his left hand covered on the wound on his chest. There was an iron chain hanging from his neck. One end of the chain was connected to the giant wheel in his right hand, and the other end was connected to another saw wheel. If I remember correctly, Yoruichi looked at the other party and said, "You should be the vice captain of the 9th Division, Zanpakuto of Hisagi Shuhei, let's die." I shrank. You seem to have attacked Hisagi Shuhei and killed him. Defeat, and then defeat Kira Izuru, the vice captain of the 3rd Division who came to support, right? HMPH, Feng Di snorted coldly and did not speak. Yoruichi smiled lightly, and Ichigo swooped and dived towards the wind. Suddenly, behind Ichigo, there was a huge sound of breaking the air, and at the same time, a basketball-sized fireball directly attacked in front of Ichigo. At this time, Yoruichi's figure stood up and stood behind Ichigo with one foot, opened his hands and shouted, "The 31 Red Cannon of Hado." Yoruichi's red cannon is not the red cannon used by Yoruichi before, and I saw a huge red energy ball blasting out directly. With a sound of bang, then only a fat man was seen holding a meteor hammer and fell to Feng Di's side. And Ichigo held the hilt in his hand and slashed down suddenly. A blade appeared directly in front of the fireball, and then directly cut the fireball into 2 pieces. It's Zanpakuto from Omeda Marichio, the vice captain of the 2nd Division, with a 5-shaped head, Yoruichi said while standing beside Ichigo. This image is probably thick and no one else can fit it except that guy. Yes, it's exactly the same as that guy, but the fireball just now was definitely not released by this guy. Ichigo watched the fat man take out a food bag, and then saw him take out a pancake from the bag to eat when he got up. He did look exactly like his owner, Omeda Marichio. Advertisement, hey, didn't you say that these Shinigami are no big deal? Wushingtu looked at Feng Dai on top, took a bite of the pancake, and then smiled at Feng Dai. Now look at yours, it doesn't seem like you're a big deal, either. HMPH, it's my business, you don't have to worry about it. Feng Di looked at Wu Xing too and said unceremoniously, "Even without you, I will be fine." Dang dang dang, you guy, you really don't know what to do. I saw a girl in a white and purple kimono with a pink ribbon appearing on the other side of Feng Di, with brown hair and a unique hairpin, like a 7 knives shape. There are also 2 basketball-sized bells hanging from the end of the ribbon. Oh, there is a newcomer. There is no knife in his hand, so I don't know who it is. Yoruichi looked at the girl and said. Ichigo put his eyes on the girl's hairpin and thought for a moment. Ichigo looked at the girl and said, "If I'm not mistaken, you should be Zanpakuto Fame of the 5th Division Vice Captain Hinamori Momo." "Oh, how did you know?" Fame asked, looking at Ichigo with a smile. Ichigo pointed out the hairpin on her head and said, "Your hairpin seems to be exactly the shape of Zanpakuto after liberation. I don't think other Zanpakuto would be interested in other Zanpakuto-shaped hairpins." "Yes, I'm Fame, but this is not a hairpin." Fame stretched out her hand and I touched the Fame hairpin on my head. "Lee's good. This is my knife." A Fame hairpin turned into a knife in an instant. The tip of the knife pointed straight at Ichigo. Wind Death, Fame, Wushingtu. Yoruichi looked at the 3 of them. No, it should be 3 Zanpakuto and said, "Before the battle, I have a few questions I want to ask. Is this place your mother? Nest?" HMPH, who knows? Feng Di took the lead and said, "If you want to know, then come and kill us." Of course. Yoruichi nodded slightly and said, "You should also know that killing you does not mean killing you. After all, Zanpakuto is born from the soul of the master. As long as the master is fine, then even if I kill you Zanpakuto, I can still let the captain of the 12th Division, Kuretsuchi Mayuri, restore you this time." Chapter 126 Rescue Captain 5. Want to kill us? Then use your strength. Fame looked at Yoruichi and said, "You can't kill anyone with your mouth." Ichigo, I don't need you to help me, Yoruichi said, standing beside Ichigo. Okay. Ichigo waved his hand slightly, and then lightly held Tensazan Jetsu in his hand, while Yoruichi rushed towards Fame, Wushingtu and Kazuya. In an instant, he came to the front of Fame and punched her. Fame looked at Yoruichi who suddenly appeared, and was shocked. She immediately used the fireball on Fame, and then with a clang, Fame held her in her hand. Yoruichi's fist was caught by a twig on his knife. However, he still couldn't resist the power of Yoruichi's fist, so he was knocked flying, and then Yoruichi's foot a little, the whole figure disappeared in place. With a boom, a saw wheel stabbed into the ground where Yoruichi had just stood. Yoruichi's figure appeared in front of Fame, facing Fame. There was only a small distance between the two, so Ichigo and Fame looked at each other face to face. But one was standing, while the other fell to the ground, and the ground was also punched with a hole. At this time, Yoruichi's mouth showed a slight smile, Fame's pupils shrank, and with a pop, Yoruichi's fist hit Fame 503's abdomen. Fame was stunned for a moment, and then looked at Yoruichi's fist with humiliation and stabbed directly at Yoruichi. "Are you humiliating me? 99? Hey." Yoruichi stepped a little, and the figure disappeared in front of Fame, and appeared 10 meters in front of her. Yoruichi stretched out his left hand and pointed to Fame's back. "Shame. I don't have that kind of time." You find it? You have one of your companions who didn't attack together. Yoruichi's words made Fei-mei slightly stunned, and at the same time, he followed Yoruichi's fingers and looked behind him, only to see that his five-shaped head was holding the meteor hammer behind him. A sneak attack on Yoruichi, but the distance between Yoruichi and Fei-mei just now was too close, so Wushingtu did not dare to attack at will, and the other Zanpakuto, when died, he still stood in place, but a blade penetrated his body, pierced his body from his back. If you take a closer look, isn't it the Zanpakuto who died of the wind? I used your body to block their sight so that they didn't see my movements, Yoruichi said with a smile. My title is Instant Yoruichi. So my speed is very fast, just now you blocking their sight, they were naturally unprepared, so they solved him very quickly, Yoruichi said, shaking his fist. Damn, you be asterisk 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 d. Fei-mei looked at Ichigo with an angry look on her face, and her originally cute face was no longer cute because of her anger. You should know that if you lose your cool in battle, you will only make yourself unable to see the opponent's moves. Yoruichi looked at Fei-mei and said, and anger will make people completely irrational. Pucci, before Fei-mei could react, Yoruichi took her knife out of her back and slashed directly on her shoulder. A bloody arrow flew out, and Yoruichi disappeared in front of Fei-mei. Appearing beside Fei-mei, she looked at the fallen Fei-mei with a slight smile and said, I'm sorry, I should not have done such a heavy hand for the sake of women, but let me send it to the 12th division. Just after saying that, Yoruichi squatted down slightly, trying to hug Fei-mei, but at this moment, a meteor hammer suddenly smashed over. With a boom, Yoruichi's figure disappeared and appeared on the other side, looking at the five-shaped head holding a meteor hammer. He was rushing towards him. Obviously his purpose should be to rescue Fei-mei. Yoruichi looking at Wushingtu, he said slightly. Cut, I almost forgot, there is still you, I'm sorry, you are the same as your master. There's no sense of existence. Yoruichi looked at Kazuma's direction with a slight pause, because he suddenly realized that he hadn't sensed Kazuya's Ryotsu by chance, and as expected, when he was looking at Kazuya's original place, there is already empty, and the wind death seems to be long gone. Che, have you escaped? Yoruichi said softly, then looked at Wu-shaped head and Fei-mei who fell to the ground. It seems that he was just when I was about to pick her up. It's a pity to escape, I thought I could catch the three of you. But forget it, as for you and Feng Death, you should be regarded as companions, you seem to be abandoned by him like this. By myself, how does it feel to be abandoned by your comrade? However, both Wushingtu and Fei-mei ignored Yoruichi's words, and Yoruichi also glanced at Ichigo at this moment, and then Yoruichi didn't bother much on this point. He looked to the other side, then put his eyes on Fei-mei and said, speaking of which, I always thought it was just an illusion, but just when I hit you, I clearly felt that, except for our in addition, it seems that there is another person or Zanpakuto, but the other party is definitely not Feng Shi, because the two kinds of Ryotsu feel completely different, although I don't know who the other party is, but the other party seems to be very related to you, Fei-mei. Otherwise, I wouldn't have revealed a huge flaw when I attacked you, allowing me to confirm his existence. Come out, don't hide, Yoruichi said loudly in one direction. I know you are there. Whisper, came a female voice, it really is that stupid woman. Fei-mei fell to the ground and said, Yoruichi looked at Ichigo and found that Ichigo was gone, so she was slightly taken aback, and at this time, I saw the wind and sand swept across the sky. Come, although Yoruichi has been on full alert for a long time, but he is not prepared for the other party to come to this trick, so in order to cope with the big eyes from that corner, there are a lot of wind and sand blowing into the eyes. Although Yoruichi immediately blocked his hand in front of him, but in just a short moment, Yoruichi lost his sight, but with Yoruichi's strength, it is now a trivial matter, and it is not defenseless, although Yoruichi looks he seemed to be standing there unguarded, but Yoruichi's Ryotsu was distributed around his body. If someone approached him or even attacked him, then Yoruichi would let him know his strength. Yoruichi has absolute confidence to hit the opponent before attacking himself. The ashes in the sky blocked Yoruichi's sight. I've been hit. Yoruichi said, because suddenly Yoruichi couldn't feel Fei-mei's Ryotsu, and with the form in front of him, it was obvious that someone came to save Fei-mei. Yoruichi's eyes narrowed and he wanted to chase after him, but the ashes around him completely surrounded Ichigo. Yoruichi just took 2 steps and touched the ashes, and when he was about to be attacked, Ichigo suddenly appeared in front of Yoruichi and blocked that Zanpakuto's attack with Tensa Zanjetsu, and she saw Ichigo inside without being affected at all. Immediately back out. Ichigo glanced at Yoruichi who covered his eyes and stopped chasing. Ichigo put his hand on his Tensa Zanjetsu. Ichigo looked at the torn dust, and then directly raised the Tensa Zanjetsu in his hand and slashed. A huge silver-white edge with a sky-blue arc-shaped sword pressure shot directly at the ash in front. The ashes dissipated, Fei-mei and Wushingtu were all gone, so that's fine. He had already expected this, but the strange thing was that the other party didn't attack him, and no one stayed, that is to say, the place is to give up the plan to chase after him. Interesting, Ichigo said with a smile on the corner of his mouth. The attack method just now, if I remember correctly, should be Zanpakuto, Hineka's attack method from Matsumoto Rangaku, Vice Captain of the 10th Division, Hineka. Turn around and walk towards Yoruichi. Chapter 127. Rescue Captain 6 Ichigo came to Yoruichi's side, tapped her forehead and said, really, why do you underestimate the enemy? Yoruichi stuck out his tongue when he heard this, then laughed dryly, and then Ichigo shook his head and went to the small lake next to him to get some water. I got a wet towel and came to Yoruichi's side to get the sand out of her eyes. Yoruichi looked at Ichigo very nervously, and when Ichigo saw her, he shook his head and said, "Be careful in the future." He breathed a sigh of relief, and then quickly followed. After Yoruichi, Ichigo and Unohana Retsu were separated. Unohana Retsu and other 5 people were divided into 3 teams. Unohana Retsu himself was on a team, and the fastest and most agile Shatterbee was on a team alone. The rest is naturally Jashiro Yukitake, Kyoraku Shunsui, and Hitsugaya Dashiro as a team. Although Unohana Retsu originally planned to have Shitsugaya and Hitsugaya Dashiro as a team, as the commander-in-chief of stealthy mobility, she is naturally born. It is more suitable to act alone, and because Shatterbee admires Yoruichi very much, she can almost be regarded as a copy of Yoruichi. Like Yoruichi, she is a natural top scout and assassin, so I finally decided to let Shibi act alone. After all, this is the only way, only then can she fully unleash the full power of Broken Bee. On the contrary, if she is allowed to cooperate with her teammates, it will only limit her hands and feet. If nothing else, no matter how strong her opponent is, it will reveal that she is naturally capable of fusion. Traces of Broken Bees entering any environment. And Unohana Retsu herself also considered that one person can move a little more freely, and Kyoraku Shunsui is bound to act together with Jashiro Yukitake, so after Unohana Retsu thought about it, and after the Broken Bee left alone, she also left. Just before leaving, leave one sentence. You only have distribution. In this case, 5 people become 3 teams, but this is not the final assignment. Kyoraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitake both looked at each other. How should we assign it? Kyoraku Shunsui said helplessly, but at this time Hitsugaya Dashiro was already walking in another direction. You guys stay here and think about it, I'll take a step first. After Hitsugaya Dashiro jumped a few times, his figure had completely disappeared from Kyoraku Shunsui and in front of Jashiro Yukitake. Captain Hitsugaya, Captain Hitsugaya. Jashiro Yukitake called out a few times, but Hitsugaya Dashiro did not respond to him. In the end, Jashiro Yukitake could only shake his head slightly and gave up his plan to call Hitsugaya Dashiro back. Kyoraku Shunsui said with a slight smile, I didn't expect that our 5 captains plus 2 super captains, such a huge power team turned into 5 teams in this short moment. Team Chun Shui, now is not the time to talk about this. Jashiro Yukitake said, if the 7 of us gather together, then the power generated will naturally be very strong. We can take every step and go straight to the place where the SEAL captain is. But now the 7 of us are completely dispersed, and we are now in the headquarters of the other party. In this case, we have no geographical advantage, so it is easy to be defeated by the enemy one by one. Yes, but it's not completely bad, there are some good points. Kyoraku Shunsui said with a slight smile. If we stay together, then the enemy will naturally not have to worry about other places, just need to concentrate all the strength. Just come and attack us, and you know, our Zanpakuto should also be in the enemy's camp, and we will most likely be wiped out by the opponent. But now it's different, because we are scattered, and the opponent has to separate other Zanpakuto to block other people. Otherwise, as long as anyone reaches the place where the old man was sealed, then it is very likely that the old man will be rescued, and then they need to face the old man. You should also know the power of the old man. No one in Zanpakuto can stop the old man's attack, even that Muramasa is no exception. Kyoraku Shunsui pulled the hat on his head slightly and said, whether we act separately or together, each has its own advantages and disadvantages, but almost all of us are captains. The only one who is not, Mr. Kurosaki, has the strength to surpass the captain. Each of us has enough strength to act together, on the contrary, it will get in the way. In these words, it is better to act separately. In this case, everyone can exert their full strength. I think Yoruichi and Captain Unohana should have seen this, so they each chose a direction. That's right. Jashiro Yukitake nodded slightly, then looked at Kyoraku Shunsui and said, then let's go too, but the 2 of us will be in a team. Speaking of which, Chunshui, we haven't fought side by side like this for a long time. Yeah, it's been a long time. Kyoraku Shunsui nodded slightly and said, just to revisit today. As he said this, a unique look appeared in Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes. The real captain of the 8th Division, one of the more than 10 people who stood above all sentient beings in Soul Society and stood at the top of Soul Society. Immediately, the look in Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes disappeared, and he changed back again, the frivolous middle-aged and wretched uncle. But Jashiro Yukitake knew that this was just his disguise, and then the 2 walked in the same direction together. Is it too confident? Or something else? Yoruichi and Ichigo came to a cave. Yoruichi looked at the cave in front of him and said, I didn't encounter any traps or obstacles when I came here. Ask for flowers. What's wrong, Yoruichi? Ichigo looked at Yoruichi and asked with some doubts. The leader of the SEAL is in front. Yoruichi pointed to the cave in front of him and said, but Ichigo, we came all the way. Except for one attack at the beginning, we came all the way very safely, not to mention the attack by Zanpakuto, even if not even a single trap was triggered. This place is built underground. When building, you can add countless traps, but whether it was the last time I came to investigate this time, and this time, we were not in any danger. Don't you think it's strange? Indeed, this cave should be Zanpakuto's lair. It stands to reason that even if the back is not strict, but it is not so, it makes people feel like no one. Ichigo said slightly. And if not before, if we have encountered an attack, I am afraid this cave is completely an ordinary cave, and speaking, it seems that someone deliberately let us come here. Point 0. It's not completely impossible. Yoruichi nodded slightly. And if you think about it like this, then you can say a lot of things, but there is one thing that can't make sense. Our purpose is to rescue the captain, Your Excellency. Suppose, Ichigo, I am those Zanpakuto, if I am your enemy, then as an enemy, I will naturally try my best to prevent you from rescuing the captain. After all, the captain's power is too powerful. Since I chose to seal, I naturally cannot control this force. In order to prevent this force from becoming my geothermal heat, then I have few choices, but try to prevent you from approaching the captain, so that you can't rescue the captain. This is inevitable. If I don't say so, then there are only two results. First, the value is not enough, Ichigo said. Old Yamamoto is not qualified to let them spend their energy to protect. But this is obviously impossible. Even among Zanpakuto, someone should be able to think that old Yamamoto was rescued. If you do, then for Jingling Court, it is not just the question of whether there is an old Yamamoto, but the morale of the entire Jingling Court. As long as the old Yamamoto is in Jingling Court, then there are 13 teams in Jingling Court. It will be as stable as a mountain, and even in battle, it can add a little more strength, but on the contrary, if there is no old Yamamoto in Jingling Court, the morale of the squad will gradually decrease, and finally it will be broken and vulnerable. Second, Yoruichi said, the enemy has set up traps waiting for me, waiting for us to take the bait, so all the traps are in front of us. He said with a slight pause, but it seems that we have no choice. If we give up or if we back down, we will never be able to save the commander-in-chief, so we can only continue to work hard. Yoruichi stepped forward and pushed open the door of the cave. Chapter 128, Rescue Captain 7. When Yoruichi pushed open the door, the figure of the captain Yamamoto Uenyujai Shigekuni appeared in her eyes, but the current captain closed his eyes slightly, and his face was kind, just like an ordinary old man. His Zanpakuto was held in his arms by him, and there was a triangular barrier around it. This barrier was obviously the main force of the SEAL commander Yamamoto Uenyujai Shigekuni. As long as this barrier could be broken, then naturally the captain was rescued. It hasn't changed at all. Yoruichi glanced around and said, last time I was like this too, the only difference was that there were a few people standing around at that time, and they seemed to be maintaining the barrier. But this time there's not even one person, it seems to be telling us that it's a trap. And Ichigo said, 507, very easily, since that person doesn't come out, then let's destroy this. Who said nobody's there? After Ichigo finished speaking, a voice sounded. I saw a person walking out slowly behind a rock wall behind the commander-in-chief. Muramasa. Yoruichi looked at the man who suddenly appeared and said slightly stunned. Ichigo said with some dissatisfaction, Yoruichi, really, it's time to teach you how to use your current power. Yoruichi was also stunned when he heard this, because Yoruichi didn't have a good control after getting his current power. Hold, because the power is too strong, so Ichigo temporarily sealed her extra power. Shihouin Yoruichi's name, I've already heard it like thunder. Muramasa said with a slight smile, and in the Soul Society's collection, I've seen your name on it countless times, Flash Goddess, Master Shihouin Yoruichi, the owner of Shihouin and the captain of the second division of the previous generation. Hey, Yoruichi's mouth cracked slightly, revealing a smile. If it looks like this, you really know me well, but if I'm not mistaken, you should be the reason for all Zanpakuto's betrayal, and since it appears here, it means that this is your lair. As long as you step on this lair and defeat you, then you will naturally be able to restore all the betrayed Zanpakuto to their senses. Muramasa didn't answer Yoruichi's words, but looked at Ichigo and said, although I know Mr. Yoruichi very well, there is really little information about Mr. Kurosaki. Hearing this, Ichigo chuckled, and Yoruichi also smiled and said, why? Want to make a plan after getting to know Ichigo? 35. There's no such thing, Lord Yoruichi, but do you want to fight me? Muramasa asked with a smile while looking at Yoruichi. But Lord Yoruichi, if you want to fight me, it's not that easy. By the way, Yoruichi my lord, I heard that as the Flash Goddess you have 2 disciples, and you have taught 2 Shunpo, one of them is the man next to you, Kurosaki Ichigo. Ah, so it is, Yoruichi said softly. However, Ichigo is not really my disciple. I will teach Ichigo Shunpo because of another person, and I am Ichigo's lover now. Still holding Ichigo's arm. I know, Urahara Kazuki, Muramasa said with a smile. Urahara Kazuki, the captain of the 12th Division, the founder and first director of the Technology Development Bureau. Before serving as the captain of the 12th Division, you were the 2nd Division captain. When he was the captain of the division, he was the 3rd seed of the 2nd Division, and also served as the sub-captain of the supervision team of one of the 5 secret mobile divisions, and later, he seemed to be involved in the rebellion, so he disappeared from the Soul Society, and you disappeared at the same time, the captain of the 2nd Division. It seems that you have investigated us very clearly, Yoruichi said, looking at Muramasa. Advertisement, I don't fully understand, but these are all recorded in the Soul Society. Although it took a lot of time to find these things, thanks to the huge database of the Soul Society, I know a lot of secrets, Muramasa said. Really? Yoruichi looked at Muramasa, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a murderous aura appeared directly. Don't be too anxious, Yoruichi-sama, Muramasa said with a smile on his face. By the way, Yoruichi-sama, Since Kurosaki Ichigo is not your disciple, I would like to ask another Byakuya Kuchiki. Are you your disciple? You mean little Byakuya? Yoruichi smiled softly. It shouldn't be counted. Yoruichi smiled softly. Little Byakuya is not my disciple, to be precise, it should be regarded as my younger brother. Really? Muramasa replied. I heard that you not only taught in Shunpo, but it seems that you also taught Byakuya Kuchiki the special footwork of the Shihouin family. It looks like you really found out a lot of things, Yoruichi said. Her figure disappeared immediately, and Yoruichi's figure appeared behind Masa Muramura. To the village is. Seeing that Yoruichi was about to hit Muramasa, Muramasa's figure suddenly disappeared with a boom, and the ground where Muramasa was standing cracked instantly, turning into a big pit. Muramasa's figure appeared not far away, but the one who just appeared had his foot smashed behind him. With a bang, Muramasa flew out as a whole, and a Yoruichi suddenly appeared behind him, his fist aimed at Muramasa's heart, as if he was waiting for Muramasa to come and hit him. Shoo! Suddenly, countless sakura petals suddenly appeared and wrapped around Yoruichi's fist. At the same time, some sakura petals appeared behind Muramasa to form a sakura flower. From a bang, these sakura petals caught Muramasa, and immediately it headed for the Knight 1.4 attack. This way of attacking, Yoruichi's foot a little, the figure disappeared in place. Sakura flower's attack failed. Yoruichi's figure appeared again. She looked around and said, "It's the little Byakuya's Zanpakuto Senbon Sakura." A figure appeared in front of Yoruichi. This is a samurai wearing a ferocious mask, with a headdress of sakura petals on his head, and countless sakura petals are flying behind him. Obviously he is Senbon Sakura. I'm sorry. Muramasa looked at Yoruichi and said, when facing the legendary flash goddess, I used Shunpo out of my control. This is really an insult to Yoruichi-sama. But Yoruichi-sama, I said it before, your opponent is not me. My opponent? Yoruichi said, you mean, Senbon Sakura is my opponent? Chapter 129. Byakuya Kuchiki appears. No, he is not your opponent, Yoruichi-sama. Senbon Sakura is one of the opponents I chose for you. Yoruichi-sama, your other opponent is already standing behind you. Muramasa said with a smile, and right at this when a figure appeared behind Yoruichi, Yoruichi noticed the figure for the first time, but Yoruichi didn't do anything, because although Yoruichi didn't see it, he could feel that the other party didn't seem to attack him, so Yoruichi also he didn't do anything, just turned around slightly and looked at the person behind him. The moment Yoruichi turned around, her pupils suddenly expanded, and there was a hint of disbelief in her eyes. Lil Byakuya, how could it be you? How could you? 35. Shouin Yoruichi, can you please leave here? Byakuya Kuchiki looked at Yoruichi without any expression on his face and said, if that's the case, I can let you live. Hey, although I don't know what's going on. Yoruichi looked at Kuchiki Shiro 26 and said, but it looks like you were taking refuge with Zanpakuto, but forget it, let's not mention this, let's not say anything else, even if it seems that the commander-in-chief is right in front of my eyes, how could I just retreat like this? Really? Byakuya Kuchiki responded slightly, stretched out his hand slightly and pulled out the Zanpakuto from his waist. Scatter? Senbon Sakura. I saw Byakuya Kuchiki's blade turn into sakura petals and fell down. The glove suddenly appeared in Yoruichi's hand, and then immediately appeared in front of Byakuya Kuchiki, directly hitting Byakuya Kuchiki. A group of sakura petals appeared in front of Byakuya Kuchiki in time, blocking the sudden blow for Byakuya Kuchiki. Byakuya Kuchiki slightly looking up in Ichigo's direction. Senbon Sakura. Yes, master, Senbon Sakura replied, and then rushed towards Ichigo. Let me be your opponent. Senbon Sakura fell in front of Ichigo. But Senbon Sakura didn't move, because he knew Ichigo's strength was very strong terrible, can kill him in seconds, so he just came to interfere with Ichigo. Don't be so nervous, I won't do it now, Ichigo said very easily, and Senbon Sakura nodded after hearing it, but didn't speak, and Ichigo didn't care whether he heard it or not, just looked at Yoruichi's fight. Byakuya Kuchiki stretched out his hand slightly, shoo shoo, countless sakura petals swept in, hey. Yoruichi stepped a little, and the figure disappeared in place in an instant. Byakuya Kuchiki raised his other hand. Both hands operated at the same time. The speed of sakura petals flying immediately more than doubled, but even this still can't catch up with Yoruichi. Yoruichi can become flash goddess. Not for dry meals. Even Byakuya Kuchiki's Senbon Sakura has trouble catching up to Yoruichi. The village is looking at the battle group with a unique smile on the corner of his mouth. There is no worry on his face, it seems that he is not afraid that his party will be defeated. It was true on the surface that Byakuya Kuchiki had the upper hand, but in fact even Byakuya Kuchiki and Senbon Sakura knew that although they had the upper hand on the surface, in reality, neither of them had much confidence in winning. And neither Yoruichi nor Ichigo was serious, otherwise they both knew what happened to them. Just when Yoruichi and Ichigo came to the stone room of the sealed captain, the other captains who entered the cave were also blocked by other Zanpakuto. Advertisement. Let's play with this. Two very cute little boys who look almost exactly the same, wear high hats and clothes similar to cloaks, and each holds a folding fan in their hands. At this time, they are pulling Jashiro alone. One of his hands said, come on, let's play with us. Jashiro said with a helpless wry smile. Well, this is not a place for children, you should go home quickly. No, we want to play games, one of them said. By the way, let's guess who we are first. If you guess wrong, you will be punished. Guess quickly, Guess quickly. One of the children shook Jashiro's arm constantly. That, are you Sogyo no Kotori? Jashiro looked at the two children and said. You guessed it right. This is the reward. Sogyo no Kotori said at the same time, and then handed the fan in his hand to Jashiro. Jashiro froze for a moment, then smiled and stretched out his hand to pick it up, but just after this death, a thunderlight in a flash, Jashiro immediately crouched down, and a thunderlight passed over Jashiro's head, directly smashing the rock above. Yeah, he was fooled. Sogyo no Kotori held hands and turned and ran away. It's really too bad, kids. Jashiro's smile disappeared, and he said with a serious face. Then he turned his head to look at Kiraku Shunsui. Kiraku Shunsui nodded slightly and said, Go, Jashiro, I also want to deal with my own affairs. Jashiro nodded slightly, then chased in the direction of Sogyo no Kotori. After a while, when Jashiro was almost completely gone, Kiraku Shunsui said, You should come out. Right after Sogyo no Kotori appeared, just like Jashiro knew Sogyo no Kotori, I also know you, Kaden Kyokotsu. Following Kiraku Shunsui's opening, a figure appeared in front of Kiraku Shunsui, with purple hair slightly curled on both sides, with a large and exaggerated skull decoration on his hair, wearing a 507 wearing a blindfold, wearing a dress similar to a skirt, revealing a large piece of tender skin, with a red ribbon tied around her slender neck. Her figure is very hot, just like Matsumoto Rangaku, the same mature, female image and the same surging waves. Sogyo no Kotori and Jashiro went to play games, so what shall we play? Kiraku Shunsui said looking at Kaden Kyokotsu. I'm so sorry, the game with you is already over. Kaden Kyokotsu refused without hesitation. I'm tired of your decadent appearance, so I left you. Don't say that, after all we've been together for so long. Oh, by the way. Kiraku Shunsui said with a faint smile. There should be another Kaden Kyokotsu. I feel two Ryotsu nearby. One is you, yes, there is another one, although I haven't seen it, but this kind of familiarity on Ryotsu. I don't think there is anything wrong, it should be another Kaden Kyokotsu. A girl ninja who seemed to be somewhat restrained came out, with thin straight short hair, with a single skull decoration on the left side of the hair. Her face was covered by a mask and hair, only the right eye was visible, and she was dressed in a ninja outfit. She didn't seem to want to speak. After appearing, she just stood there silently. Chapter 130. Kaden Kyokotsu, do you know that we are two? Kaden Kyokotsu S, that mature woman is represented by S, the other is represented by X, looked at Kiraku Shunsui and asked suspiciously, and then said to himself, I'm really confused, you are our master after all, and it's no big deal to know that we are two of us. Then Kaden Kyokotsu spoke again, you just said, you want to play games with us, right? 35. N. Kiraku Shunsui nodded slightly and said, finally want to play with me, but what's the best way to play? It's up to me to decide. Kaden Kyokotsu said, let's just play. When he said this, Kaden Kyokotsu paused slightly, then suddenly pulled out a big sword and shouted, Shadow Ghost. Suddenly Kaden Kyokotsu he rushed in front of Kiraku Shunsui and slashed at Kiraku Shunsui's shadow with the big knife in his hand. Kiraku Shunsui had already prepared in his heart, almost the moment Kaden Kyokotsu's launch, Kiraku Shunsui launched at the same time, with a dang from his Zanpakuto. Kiraku Shunsui held Kaden Kyokotsu's broadsword. So dangerous, so dangerous. Kiraku Shunsui looked at Kaden Kyokotsu and said, if I get hit, then I'll take twice as much damage. You seem to have forgotten that I'm not alone, Kaden Kyokotsu said with a smile. Kiraku Shunsui glanced and saw that where Kaden Kyokotsu was standing, she was no longer there. On the contrary, Kiraku Shunsui clearly felt Ryotsu of Kaden Kyokotsu X is approaching behind him. How could I forget her? Kiraku Shunsui replied, as your master, how could I forget you? Shoo, Kiraku Shunsui disappeared immediately. Kaden Kyokotsu's attack failed, but the two none of the Kaden Kyokotsu seemed to have any unexpected expressions. They have been following Kiraku Shunsui for many years. Naturally, they know that it is impossible to cause damage to Kiraku Shunsui with the attack just now, but it is precisely because they have followed Kiraku Shunsui. It has been many years, so they are very clear about Kiraku Shunsui's strength, and relatively, they are also very clear about Kiraku Shunsui's weakness. The figure of Kiraku Shunsui reappeared, but at the moment of his appearance, Kaden Kyokotsu also appeared behind Kiraku Shunsui, and the big sword in his hand stabbed into the shadow behind Kiraku Shunsui. With a puff, Kiraku Shunsui's shoulder seemed to have been pierced by a large sword, and a column of blood spurted out. Kiraku Shunsui groaned, and then the entire figure disappeared instantly, and Kaden Kyokotsu did not pursue this time, because the two Kaden Kyokotsu knew that they were able to hit before because Kiraku Shunsui did not really enter the fighting state. That's why he was hit so easily by Kaden Kyokotsu. The figure of Kiraku Shunsui reappeared, he glanced at his shoulder a little, and then put his eyes on the two Kaden Kyokotsu. Is that so much strength? Kaden Kyokotsu looked at Kiraku Shunsui and said, really? It's disappointing. Kaden Kyokotsu said, holding a large sword and heading straight towards Kiraku Shunsui, while Kaden Kyokotsu followed Kaden Kyokotsu's side, and the two advanced almost at the same time, assisting each other. Advertisement Kiraku Shunsui watched the movements of the two Kaden Kyokotsu. His eyes narrowed slightly, while the movements of the two Kaden Kyokotsu paused slightly. And looked at each other quickly, and then the two of them fired at the same time. Kaden Kyokotsu attacked Kiraku Shunsui's upper body, and the other one attacked the lower body of Kiraku Shunsui, and the two large knives attacked Kiraku Shunsui at the same time, and Kiraku Shunsui held two knives with two knives, just because they could not be released, so the two knives in Kiraku Shunsui's hands were just ordinary zanpakuto, nothing special. Yes, the only special thing is that the knife on Kiraku Shunsui's left hand is more like a small dagger. Dang dang dang. The sound of the blades intersecting kept ringing, and, click, suddenly, Kiraku Shunsui used the two knives in his hands to clamp the two blades of the two Kaden Kyokotsu. Just after the two Kaden Kyokotsu looked at each other, at the same time, he pulled out the big knife, and then each moved to one side in a vertical direction, and then the two attacked from the left and right sides at the same time. Kiraku Shunsui's figure turned and stepped back, turning the two people's left and right pincer attack into an attack in one direction, and then the two-handed sword in his hand swung to the middle, the sound of dang dang dang. Blades intersecting. I saw Kiraku Shunsui constantly retreating, while constantly blocking the attacks of the two Kaden Kyokotsu. Era, is your strength only that little? Kaden Kyokotsu kept attacking and said at the same time, if that's the case, I'm afraid you won't be able to save your life from our hands. Oh, fighting against women, especially with a beautiful woman like you, is already embarrassing me. Kiraku Shunsui said with a smile, now it's already exhausted. Really? So sorry, we don't have time to follow your pace. Kaden Kyokotsu's attack suddenly intensified, sped up a bit and attacked Kiraku Shunsui suddenly, although her accelerated attack, another Kaden Kyokotsu's attack has also become more bizarre and unpredictable, and the attack speed is getting faster and faster. As for Kiraku Shunsui, he seems to be really embarrassed. He never took the initiative to attack, just kept defending, but defense is not invincible, long-standing will be lost. There is a flaw here, Kaden Kyokotsu said suddenly, and at the same time the blade in his hand had been cut off. Chang, Kiraku Shunsui turned his feet, his body swayed, two sleeves thorns fell, Kaden Kyokotsu's, Li's Zhao, and both Kiraku Shunsui's sleeves fell down at the same time. And Kaden Kyokotsu's attack was still blocked by Kiraku Shunsui. Really, it's really troublesome to have such a strong master. Kaden Kyokotsu looked at Kiraku Shunsui and said, at least when I try to kill the master, I still can't succeed. Kiraku Shunsui looked at the two women after his zanpakuto materialized, slightly held the hat on his head with zanpakuto, and said helplessly, I still can't really start, really. It seems that the battle will drag on for a long time. It seems that it can only prolong the time. Kaden Kyokotsu looked at Kiraku Shunsui and said, this is our base camp, as long as we delay time, there will be other zanpakuto to support us soon. At that time, I will master, your situation is very dangerous. Chapter 131. Ichigo shot. Boom, boom, the two huge Sakura columns attacked Yoruichi under the control of Byakuya Kuchiki. Yoruichi exerted his footwork to the limit. Byakuya Kuchiki's attacks could only keep falling behind Yoruichi, but Yoruichi did not. He didn't take the initiative to attack, as if he had some scruples in his heart, he just kept dodging, and he didn't make any moves to approach Byakuya Kuchiki, let alone fight back. Muramasa looked at the battlefield gently, and he had no doubts about Yoruichi's actions. After all, Yoruichi and Byakuya Kuchiki have always had a good relationship, and Yoruichi not only taught Byakuya Kuchiki Shunpo, but also Shihouin's secret footwork. It was taught to Byakuya Kuchiki. This is the footwork that even Ichigo did not learn from Fuki Point. But Yoruichi taught Byakuya Kuchiki. It can be seen that Yoruichi values Byakuya Kuchiki, so Yoruichi's constant avoidance is more in line with emotion. Of course, this doesn't mean that Yoruichi has feelings for Byakuya Kuchiki, it's just that the master and the apprentice value him. Little Byakuya, what happened? Yoruichi looked at Byakuya Kuchiki who was constantly attacking him and said, why are you standing by Zanpakuto's side and helping Zanpakuto deal with us? What the hell is going on? Hurry up and say it. Byakuya. There's nothing to say. Byakuya Kuchiki had no expression on his face, he looked at Yoruichi indifferently and said, as expected of Shihouin Yoruichi, in my Bankai's situation, he was able to evade my attack so easily, but the next blow, can you dodge it? As Byakuya Kuchiki opened his mouth, he saw that the countless sakura petals in front of him gathered into a huge wave, slapped directly, and Byakuya Kuchiki said loudly, Senbon Sakura. Yes, master, Senbon Sakura immediately drew out a lot of sakura petals. But Senbon Sakura did not forget Ichigo, although he took a lot of power. He still had a small amount of power left, he gave up the attack, he put this a small part of the power is concentrated around the body, forming a thin layer of sakura flower coat. But although it is only a thin layer, because the sakura flower constantly rotates around Senbon Sakura, so the defense power is also not low, and the large number of sakura petals that were swept away also formed a huge wave and slapped away from behind Yoruichi. Yoruichi saw that she was surrounded by sakura flowers, and at this moment, she was surrounded by sakura flowers. Boom! Saw two waves of sakura flowers collided directly, and the powerful force directly destroyed the entire ground, and the whole ground began to collapse, and then Byakuya Kuchiki and Senbon Sakura began to recover the sakura petals, only to see that the entire ground was blasted directly. The big pit is the size of an entire basketball court, which shows the power of the blow just now, CGBE. At this time, Yoruichi's figure suddenly appeared behind Byakuya Kuchiki. Yoruichi suddenly raised his right foot, drink. Yoruichi directly put his foot on Byakuya Kuchiki's head, and the huge force directly kicked Byakuya Kuchiki out, but then Yoruichi stopped and continued to charge towards Byakuya Kuchiki, since Yoruichi has decided to attack. Then she won't have any more hesitation. Byakuya Kuchiki just stood up, and before he fully recovered, Yoruichi was already standing in front of Byakuya Kuchiki, and at the same time a fist hit Byakuya Kuchiki. With a pop, I saw Senbon Sakura appeared in Byakuya Kuchiki's in front of the next Yoruichi's attack, while launching an attack on Yoruichi. Muramasa frowned slightly, but Yoruichi wouldn't be merciful. She directly punched to the bang. Byakuya Kuchiki took the initiative to punch and fight against Yoruichi, and at the same time, following Yoruichi's power, he supported Senbon Sakura's figure. He stepped back suddenly, and at the same time, the countless Sakura petals behind him directly divided into two Sakura styles and rushed towards Yoruichi and Ichigo respectively. Advertisement. Seeing this scene, Ichigo chuckled and didn't move, but Ryotsu, who appeared all over his body, blocked all the petals. Yoruichi avoided it very easily, and then Yoruichi's figure disappeared directly. At the same time, a fist appeared next to Byakuya Kuchiki again and hit Byakuya Kuchiki directly. This time even Senbon Sakura was within the range of this punch, and this time Yoruichi's appearance was so sudden that even Byakuya Kuchiki didn't seem to expect it, so in the face of Yoruichi's blow, Byakuya Kuchiki had almost no ability to evade or resist. With a sound of dang, I saw Muramasa appearing in front of Senbon Sakura holding a Zanpakuto, and using the blade to hold Yoruichi's fist that suddenly appeared. Then Muramasa looked at Yoruichi and slightly stretched out his left hand. Yoruichi immediately felt when a whirlwind blew. She didn't dodge, just stood there and covered her eyes with her hands. After the cyclone, a smile appeared on Muramasa's face. I'm sorry, I can't move. Yoruichi wanted to move his body, but he couldn't do it at all. Although there was nothing on his body, Yoruichi didn't. It was very clear that there seemed to be some ropes on my body, completely binding myself, making myself unable to move at all, and Ryotsu suddenly lost control, because he was completely unable to move and could not use Ryotsu. Yoruichi, who couldn't move and couldn't use Ryotsu, naturally couldn't escape, and was subdued in a short moment. Of course, this doesn't mean that Yoruichi's strength is so different from Muramasa's, it's just that she is the only one. It was the first time that I fought against Muramasa, so I had no idea about Muramasa's ability, and Yoruichi and Ichigo, either of them had great strength, especially when the two of them joined forces. In front of them, they would be powerless to fight back. The reason why he was completely subdued by Muramasa in a short period of time was because he did not understand that if he really fought, he would definitely not be Yoruichi's opponent, and he might even be able to fight in a short period of time. He lost to Yoruichi within that time. If Yoruichi could be a little more vigilant, he probably wouldn't have been trapped by Muramasa and couldn't move. But there are not so many ifs in the world, and the current situation is that Yoruichi has nothing on the surface, but actually can't move, can't use Ryotsu, and if nothing else happens, he can only be slaughtered. When a blade appeared in Byakuya Kuchiki's hand, he held the handle tightly, and there was a murderous look in his eyes, but this murderous look was not directed at Yoruichi. Damn, too careless, Yoruichi said silently in his heart, and Muramasa's Zanpakuto was walking towards Yoruichi step by step. As expected of Flash Goddess, Muramasa looked at Yoruichi and said, if it wasn't for the gap between your attack and I blocked it, I wouldn't be able to catch you at all, but you were too careless. Muramasa raised his hand directly. Zanpakuto slashed towards Yoruichi. But Yoruichi's expression didn't change at all, and he was still smiling. Crescent Moon Chong. Suddenly Ichigo's voice sounded, and Muramasa was slightly taken aback. When he raised his head, he saw a black curved crescent-shaped blade shot directly at Muramasa. Muramasa didn't dare to underestimate Ichigo's Crescent Moon Chong, so when he found the crescent moon, he immediately backed away. Even so, he just avoided it. The crescent blade slashed directly at Yoruichi's. The wound, but at this moment, they suddenly found that the power that bound themselves disappeared, that is to say, they had recovered their freedom. There was a loud boom, and between Muramasa and Yoruichi, there was a huge gap like a gap, and the gap continued to extend, as if it had opened another entrance to the cave. Obviously, this blow is the power of the crescent moon. Kurosaki Ichigo. Muramasa said softly looking at Ichigo. Chapter 132. Zaraki Kenpachi appears. Don't forget me, Muramasa. Ichigo's figure appeared between Yoruichi and Muramasa. Ichigo was holding Tensa Zangetsu in his right hand and looking at Muramasa. Really? I forgot about you. Muramasa looked at Ichigo and said, however, there are so many people who came to Yamamoto to Liaojai. Sure enough, it was the right thing to ask Yoruichi-sama to bring back the chief captain who was sealed here. Now, as long as the captain is here, then each of you will automatically be delivered to your door. It turned out to be intentional. Yoruichi looked at Muramasa and said, no wonder I find it so strange that the defense of the place where you sealed the commander-in-chief is so lax, that you let me in and out so easily, so you deliberately let me bring this news you went back, but what is your purpose? Muramasa, is it just for me to bring all the captains here? Who knows? Muramasa said with a smile, and then turned around with Zanpakuto in his hand. Come to beat me, if that's the case, maybe I'll remember why. Really? Yoruichi responded and bent down slightly. Obviously, Yoruichi was ready to fight, but at this moment, Ichigo reached out his hand slightly to stop Yoruichi and said, "Okay, let me come. Wait a minute and then unseal your seal." Hearing this, Yoruichi nodded obediently, while Muramasa said in confusion, "Seal?" And Ichigo didn't hide it at all and said, "Yeah, it's Yoruichi's seal, because Yoruichi can't adapt to his own strength, so I put a seal on her, or do you think you can beat her with just a few of you?" "I see." Muramasa nodded slightly and said, "I see, Kurosaki Ichigo, I'm standing here right now. If you have the ability, you can come. Kuchiki, Senbon Sakura, don't meddle in this battle, and don't let others step in." Byakuya Kuchiki did not speak, but the Sakura style in front of him gradually retracted and retreated behind him, while Senbon Sakura first looked at Byakuya Kuchiki and saw that Byakuya Kuchiki did not object, and then spoke. "Yes, Muramasa-san. In this case, the battle is up to you, Ichigo, but please fix him for me." Yoruichi looked at Ichigo and said. Advertisement. Ichigo showed a slight smile, holding the handle of Tensa Zangetsu in his hand, smiled at her, then looked at Muramasa and said, "Come on." Muramasa disappeared in an instant and came behind Ichigo with a knife, and Ichigo raised the knife to block it easily, while Muramasa was stunned for a moment. In this stunned state, Ichigo also used Shunpo to come to the side of Muramasa and give him a knife. Although Muramasa blocked it, he was still opened. "It's so fast," Muramasa said in his heart as he looked at the blade in his hand. "Although I haven't really fought before, I heard Zanpakuto's descriptions and felt that he wasn't very strong, but I didn't expect him to be so strong. It's all wrong. Kurosaki Ichigo's strength is so strong, even Yamamoto Yuanlaojai should not be as good, and he and Shihouin Yoruichi's Zanpakuto are very strange. I can't feel the soul of the sword inside." "You seem to be distracted. You are so bold." Ichigo's figure appeared in front of Muramasa, and Tensa Zangetsu in his hand slashed without hesitation. Muramasa was shocked. He didn't think that it wasn't Ichigo's full strength just now, but Ichigo's speed. It actually got faster, and before he even noticed it, Ichigo appeared in front of him. With a puff, Tensa Zangetsu slashed down, and a pillar of blood spurted out from Muramasa's chest, but Muramasa's strength was not bad after all, and Ichigo didn't want to kill him now, so he was in as soon as Ichigo opened his mouth. He had already stepped back. Although he did not completely avoid this attack, he only let Tensa Zangetsu brush past him, so although the knife on the chest looked serious, in fact, the wound was not very serious. "Hey, is this your real power?" After Muramasa distanced himself from Ichigo, he looked at Ichigo and said, "Exactly, if there is no such power, I would be too disappointed." Then Kurosaki Ichigo, you just let me see. You are the most mysterious person recorded in the Soul Society, and you have an existence that can surpass the captain, and how powerful you are. Don't let me down, Kurosaki Ichigo. So Soul Society recorded me like this, Ichigo said. If that's the case, then I can't let Soul Society's record make mistakes. Ichigo stepped a little under his feet, and the whole person rushed towards Muramasa. Muramasa held the Zanpakuto in his hand and aimed it at Ichigo. Ichigo watched Muramasa's actions with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, Ichigo disappeared completely, and Muramasa's pupils shrank suddenly and said in shock, "It's not Shunpo, this is what footwork, totally different from Shunpo, wait, it seems like a fake." "You're distracted again, what are you thinking during the battle?" Ichigo's figure appeared behind Muramasa and said, but before Ichigo could speak, the Tensa Zangetsu held by Ichigo's right hand had already been cut off. "If you don't retreat, you will be hit by Tensa Zangetsu again." However, even if he found out, he couldn't hide, because Ichigo was faster than before this time. Poof, Chang, Tensa Zangetsu slashed on Muramasa's left shoulder, but as soon as he slashed into his shoulder, Muramasa held Zanpakuto and held Ichigo's Tensa Zangetsu. Advertisement. Blood continued to flow down Tensa Zangetsu's blade. Although Muramasa held Tensa Zangetsu had already cut into Muramasa's shoulder. If Muramasa hadn't blocked Tensa Zangetsu in time, I'm afraid this knife would have been directly cut off Muramasa's entire shoulder, but even now, Muramasa is in extreme danger. After all, this knife may be completely chopped off at any time. Katakana middle dot katakana middle dot ask for flowers katakana middle dot. Muramasa, is your strength just like that? Ichigo held Tensa Zangetsu in his right hand and pressed it down very easily. If so, I'm afraid you will die here today this time. Hey, Kurosaki Ichigo, your strength is indeed beyond my expectations. Muramasa-kan and Ichigo said, I didn't expect that it was not your full strength just now. As the Soul Society records, you are a very strong person. A mysterious person, and Zaraki Kenpachi was born to fight, and a warrior who died to fight. Only fighting is his spiritual food and the real purpose of living, and as long as it is fighting, then his strength it will continue to improve. This kind of talent is really scary, but I think you are even more scary than him, because now you have no idea what the limit of your strength is, so you are the most difficult to deal with among all people. Yes, but a Shihouin Yoruichi should be added by now. Maybe, Ichigo said with a slight smile, but Muramasa, your strength doesn't seem to be as strong as I imagined. If your strength is only this tight, then you are too disappointing for me. Ichigo looked at Muramasa and said, you mentioned Kenpachi just now, right? If your power is only this level, then I might as well torture Kenpachi. 0. Boom, countless rubble fell, and the mountain next to it was completely shattered. This sudden moment caused everyone present to be stunned, but Muramasa didn't care. Instead, he took advantage of the moment when Ichigo was stunned. The right hand suddenly exerted force, pushed Ichigo, and then the whole person went straight to the side and escaped from Ichigo's knife. And Ichigo didn't want to kill him, so he let him run away, and Ichigo didn't care about Muramasa. What he cared about was a Ryotsu, a familiar Ryotsu, which made Ichigo's face full of black lines. Ichigo turning his head to look at the crumbling mountain, he saw a tall figure appearing under the crumbling mountain. It was only because of the dust that he could not see the identity of this person, but the others present had already left. Ryotsu knew who this person was. Immediately under this figure, two figures appeared. Yo, Ichigo, I just heard it, and sure enough, do you want to fight with me too? My strength has become stronger now, so let's start right away. A very excited voices sounded, and then three figures walked out of the dust. Sure enough. Ichigo looked at the three figures. The one in front was Zaraki Kenpachi, and behind him were Madarame Mikaku and Yasugawa Yumichika. Ichigo looked at Zaraki Kenpachi and said with a smile, "Don't look like that same time." Little one. With a pink head sticking out from behind Zaraki Kenpachi, it was Vice Captain Kusajishi Yachiru. She stretched out her hand to greet Ichigo. Shaojian has always wanted to fight you again. Great, you guys thought of going together this time, BU. Chapter 133. Melee, Captain, now is not the time to fight with Mr. Kurosaki. Yasugawa Yumichika stood behind Zaraki Kenpachi and said, it's time to rescue the captain first. Oh, Zaraki Kenpachi turned his head slightly to look at Yamamoto Uenujai Shigekuni, the commander-in-chief in the barrier, who was holding Zanpakuto with his eyes closed. Cut, it's really troublesome, old man, it's really useless to be sealed. Then Zaraki Kenpachi put his eyes on Muramasa and said, hey, is that you? Your strength is very good, you can actually seal the old man. But from the battle between you and Ichigo just now, it seems that your strength is also very strong. Not so good, 33, huh, Zaraki Kenpachi? Muramasa glanced at Zaraki Kenpachi and said, I didn't expect there was another captain, and he was the guy who couldn't liberate Zanpakuto. But it's okay, Muramasa said with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Although there are many of you, there are also many people on my side. Following Muramasa's words, several figures appeared at the entrance of the cave behind Yoruichi. The person in the front is a man with a flame erupting from his mouth. He wears a long circle-shaped long ring that can erupt flames. It is the Zanpakuto Scourge of the 7th Division, Komamura Sajin, May 10th. There were three people behind him. One of them was a samurai-type male with a small house-like ornament on his back, holding a long stick and wrapped in a small piece of white cloth. Zanpakuto of Chojiro Sasaki, the vice-captain of the first team. The other is a big fat man, holding a meteor hammer-like thing. Naturally a 5-shaped head. The remaining person is a woman, with dark red short hair, emerald eyes, with a pair of deep red hair. A cat girl with red cat ears and a pink cat tail, wearing a pink singlet and pumpkin pants. This kind of dress should be a cat. Yoruichi glanced at it and said, and it appeared with Wu-shaped head. It should be Hineka who rescued Wu-shaped head and Feimei from Ichigo and I just now. Even if this guy doesn't come to save me, I'll be fine. It's just that she wants to save me. Feimei turned from Wu-shaped head. The wound on her body had been bandaged, but her face there's a little bit more white on it. HMPH, you are so ungrateful, Hineka said to Feimei, then looked at Yoruichi and said, I am Hineka, and it was indeed me who saved this princess typing and that dead fat man. Then Hineka raised himself slightly. The attractive red tongue licked the paw slightly and said, speaking of which, how does the paw taste? And Yoruichi didn't take it seriously, because her attacks were blocked by Ichigo. Oh, it's so beautiful. Yasugawa Yumichika looked at Hineka with an excited look on his face and said, it's really beautiful to be able to save people from Mr. Kurosaki's hands. I haven't dared to fight Mr. Kurosaki until now. This is so beautiful, said Yasugawa Yumichika, wriggling his waist unconsciously. This is his bad habit when he is excited. I can't help but wiggle all the time. Free? Era. Feimei glanced at Yasugawa Yumichika, then looked at Hineka and said, Hineka, you are really charming, you can even attract enemies. Behind Tingda's words, Hineka's eyes flashed a hint of pride. However, with Feimei's next sentence, Hineka's eyes were only filled with shame and anger. Hineka, who originally thought Yasugawa Yumichika was good, at this moment wondered why Yasugawa Yumichika didn't die sooner. Feimei's next sentence was, your charm can only attract this disgusting man who has no masculinity at all. As for the others, you can't even attract the peacock brother who practiced colored glass. I don't want to hear your compliments. Hineka heard Feimei's words, then looked at Yasugawa Yumichika's actions angrily, and said with a disgusting expression, I really don't know why the glass-colored peacock brother can bear you like this. Dead S asterisk 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 E. S asterisk 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 E. All the expressions on Yasugawa Yumichika's face froze for a moment. After a while, the expression on his face recovered. Although there was nothing on the surface, there was something in his eyes. Strong murderous intent, especially when he looked at Hineka. That murderous intent emerged like a substance. Apparently Hineka hit Yasugawa Yumichika's dead end, so Yasugawa Yumachika almost completely lost his mind. Advertisement. Yasugawa Yumachika directly pulled out Zanpakuto from his waist and walked towards Hinata. No one is allowed to snatch this opponent from me. Yasugawa Yumachika directly held Zanpakuto and rushed up. Humph, who would be afraid of you? A dead S*************. Hinata spoke coldly again. Then he also rushed towards Yasugawa Yumachika. With a sound of dang, Yasugawa attacked and slashed it down, but Hinata easily escaped. Zanpakuto slashed directly to the ground, and the gravel was splashed all over the place. At the beginning, it was stalking the master, so as a Shinigami, he would never use it to chop the ground, because it is very easy to roll the blade, but now Yasugawa Yumachika is holding Zanpakuto and chops directly on the ground. From this, it can be seen that Yasugawa Yumachika's anger. Immediately after Hinata dodged, her left hand suddenly protruded and grabbed towards Yasugawa Yumachika. With a sound of dang, Yasugawa Yumachika immediately grabbed Hinata's claws with Zanpakuto. Damn, you are attacking in the face. Yasugawa Yumachika looked at Hinata angrily and shouted. Hey, you've been fooled, Hinata said in a low voice. Come on. In an instant, countless dust flew up and attacked Yasugawa Yumachika. Yasugawa Yumachika was startled, and the figure immediately retreated, but his action was too slow. When he retreated, countless dust had surrounded him. Yasugawa Yumachika let out a scream, and at the same time rushed out of the dust, but Yasugawa Yumachika was not very good at this time. There were wounds all over his body, one after another like a cat's claws. The same marks. And where Hinata was standing, her left claw was retracted, while her right was holding a knife handle. Damn, you be ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* Haneka's face, reached out and touched it. A trace of blood flowed out. Obviously there were a lot of wounds on his face. Ayasagawa Yumachika's face showed a trace of anger. He looking at Haneka. There was a trace of murderous intent in his eyes. You actually hurt my face. I'm going to kill you as a fellow. Ayasagawa Yumachika rushed towards Haneka directly. Haneka's figure didn't move, but with a wave of the hilt in his hand, countless dust flew up and rushed towards Ayasagawa Yumachika. Ayasagawa Yumachika looked at the dust coming in front of him and suddenly accelerated, and in an instant, Ayasagawa Yumachika passed through. She wiped away the countless dust in front of her, but Haneka didn't care at all. Instead a smile appeared on her face. Ayasagawa Yumachika was startled. Dang dang, suddenly sounded a bell next to him at the same time breaking the air. Ayasagawa Yumachika turned his feet, turned his body, looked out of the corner of his eye, and saw two huge fireballs attacking him come. The fireball was about to hit Ayasagawa Yumachika, but Zanpakuto cut it directly, cutting the two fireballs in half. Hey! Madarei Makaku appeared beside Ayasagawa Yumachika to block the two huge fireballs, and then watched the release fireballs. Fame said, the battle is one-on-one. A gust of wind slammed towards Madarei Makaku. Good chance, saw Wu-shaped head smashing the meteor hammer in his hand towards Madarei Makaku. Madarei Makaku's figure turned around, dodging the meteor hammer, but this time, the two of them, the individual was surrounded by the other three people. One-on-one fighting is not suitable for us. A faint smile appeared on Wu-shaped head's face. Divine Retribution stepped forward to block Zaraki Kenpachi in front of Zaraki Kenpachi. Zaraki Kenpachi glanced at him and said with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Looking at you, it seems that you are coming to be my opponent. Well, just let me exercise, wait a minute to fight Ichigo. Then Zaraki Kenpachi charged directly towards the Scourge, and Kusajishi Yachiru jumped straight away from Zaraki Kenpachi's back. Scourge also rushed towards Zaraki Kenpachi. The two men acted like a charge horn, and all the Shinigami and Zanpakuto present rushed towards their respective opponents. All-out war broke out. Chang, Ichigo holding Tensa Zangetsu in his right hand and Zanpakuto in Muramasa's hand suddenly intersect. Ichigo's strength is greater, but now Ichigo is only holding Zangetsu in his right hand, while Muramasa is holding Zanpakuto in both hands. There is not much difference in strength, so neither of them can gain an advantage in the opponent's hands, but the 1.4 guard has not used all his strength. Ichigo directly holds the hilt of the knife, and immediately comes behind Muramasa with a sudden wave. When he was about to hit Muramasa's back, a mass of sakura petals appeared behind Muramasa, and the blade was directly blocked. Byakuya Kuchiki and Senbon Sakura simultaneously activated Kinyin, and the entire space was filled with sakura flowers, which were beautiful but extremely dangerous. But this time, next to Byakuya Kuchiki, Yoruichi appeared with his fist clenched, and his fist was hit hard. Senbon Sakura raised his hand slightly, and then Yoruichi appeared in front of Senbon Sakura again, and for a while, Shinigami and Zanpakuto formed a big melee. In the narrow space of boom, 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 the Ryatsu of several captains filled the surroundings, and the powerful force caused the surrounding rock walls to collapse one after another. Those fighting, whether it's Shinigami or Zanpakuto, have to take a small part of their minds to pay attention to the falling rocks in the sky. After all, it's easy to get distracted if you get hit in the middle of a fight. In this kind of melee, everyone is highly focused on their own spirit, and there will be several attacks if they are not careful. Once they are distracted, the consequences will be unimaginable. Chapter 134. Collapse. Different Ryatsu filled the whole cave. The powerful Ryatsu kept colliding on the cave. Because of Ryatsu's collision, all kinds of gravel kept falling, some big and small. The big one was a huge rock, the small one was just a huge rock. Some small rubble, but for Shinigami or Zanpakuto who are fighting below, the size doesn't matter. They are fighting with high concentration, and once the rock falls and hits them, it will definitely affect them even if it doesn't affect their movements, it will naturally disrupt their spirits. After all, when they are highly concentrated, something suddenly disturbs them, even if it's just a brief moment of distraction. The opponent seizes the opportunity to defeat. Boom boom boom, suddenly the whole cave collapsed suddenly, so Shinigami and Zanpakuto didn't seem to have time to escape, and they were covered by countless rocks in an instant. Outside the cave, above the surface, if someone stood here, they would see that the entire surface suddenly vibrated violently, and then the entire surface fell directly into the ground, forming a huge pit. After a while, there was no movement in the entire pothole, and it seemed that all the Shinigami and Zanpakuto had been buried alive. 26. Suddenly, in the whole pothole, a Ryotsu rose up into the sky, and before I could tell who the owner of this Ryotsu was, this Ryotsu was like a signal bomb. The gravel in the cave began to shake constantly, and the boom, boom, suddenly exploded in the pothole, and a figure rushed out every time it exploded. Dozens of figures of shoo 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 emerged from the pothole, and then everyone separated automatically and stood on both sides of the pothole. Ichigo, Yoruichi, Ayasagawa Yumachika, Madarame Makaku, Kusajishi Yachiru, and Zanpakuto Kyoraku Shunsui with Jashiro Yukataki and Broken Bee. In Broken Bee's hand there is also a very well-known woman who resembles an elf, wearing yellow-black patterned clothes and two long brown braids. On the other side, Muramasa led Byakuya Kuchiki, Senbon Sakura, two Kaden Kyokotsu and two children Sogyo no Kotowari, Hinaka, Feimei, Wushingtu, Yanling Maru, Tianju, etc. standing opposite. Allah, Kyoraku Shunsui looked at Byakuya Kuchiki for a moment, then shook his head helplessly and said, I didn't expect Captain Kuchiki to be on that side, what a pity. Byakuya Kuchiki didn't speak, and the expression on his face didn't change in the slightest. He didn't have the slightest idea of responding to Kyoraku Shunsui's words, maybe he was disdainful, or maybe he couldn't. Captain Kuchiki, Yunohana Retsu appeared behind Byakuya Kuchiki and said with a smile. You act like this, can I think that you betrayed the Soul Society like Aizen Sosuke once did? Byakuya Kuchiki's pupils shrank suddenly. No, not only Byakuya Kuchiki, but also the others present, including Muramasa. They turned their heads and looked at Yunohana who suddenly appeared in the middle of their group in surprise. Retsu, they don't know when Yunohana Retsu stood here, but watching Yunohana Retsu put her hands together slightly in front of her, like a noble and elegant lady, with a warm smile on her face, their hearts were shivering. Since Yunohana Retsu could appear behind them unknowingly, it meant that if Yunohana Retsu wanted to deal with them, it would be easy. Advertisement countless sakura flowers danced around Byakuya Kuchiki, and at this moment, Yunohana Retsu disappeared and appeared in front of Ichigo and Yoruichi. Captain Unohana, he's really amazing. Ichigo looked at Yunohana Retsu and said, although Yunohana Retsu is very low-key, the strength that occasionally shows up makes everyone dare not be presumptuous in front of him. But these people don't include Ichigo and Yoruichi. Don't say that, Mr. Kurosaki, if you're serious, they should have been resolved long ago, there's no time to react, Unohanaru said with certainty, and Ichigo didn't answer and shrugged lightly. This is. Yoruichi looked at a person in a gray-green robe behind Yunohana Retsu, because the robe covered the entire body, even the face, and outsiders could not even see the outline of the body under the robe, so it's impossible to tell if it's male or female. It's my Zanpakuto Minazuki, Yunohana Retsu said. I met him on the road, and then it was delayed until not long ago, when I was just about to find you, the cave collapsed. At this time, Minazuki slightly there was a move to raise his head, but then he disappeared behind Yunohana Retsu, and it was obvious that he had returned to Zanpakuto, and the people present were slightly taken aback. Is that the place where the captain was sealed? Yunohana Retsu turned his head to look at the barrier, and in the crack just now, the barrier of the captain was still intact. It seems that we must find a way to seal the barrier. It's enough to be rescued. But the captain seems to be in a deep sleep now. I don't know if it's the effect of the barrier or something else, but if the barrier can be broken, I think the captain can be awakened, as long as the captain can be awakened. By the way, Vice Captain, where's the captain? Madarame Makaku heard the chief captain, and then his own captain suddenly sounded, but after looking around, he didn't find Zaraki Kenpachi's figure, and asked Kusajishi Yachiru in a low voice, who was only present. People are not small people. Although Madarame Makaku lowered his voice, he was still heard by the people present. Of course, the people on Muramasa's side couldn't hear it. Is Captain Zaraki here too? Yunohana Retsu's face showed a slight smile and looked at Kusajishi Yachiru. I remember Vice Captain Kusaka and Captain Zaraki seemed to be silently going to plus 510 division. After he left the team and disappeared for such a long time, why did he suddenly appear here? Deputy Captain Kaolu, can you please give me an explanation? Small sword. Kusajishi Yachiru didn't have any explanation at all. Just when she was at a loss, Zaraki Kenpachi's Ryotsu suddenly rose into the sky, and the strong Ryotsu shot straight from the pothole into the sky, like a real Ryotsu, directly destroy the rocks in the pothole. Haha. Zaraki Kenpachi rushed out of the innumerable rubble, burst into laughter, and there was infinite joy in his laughter. And about 10 meters behind Zaraki Kenpachi is the seal of Yamamoto Uenujai Shigekuni. Damn, Zaraki Kenpachi is actually there, Muramasa shouted in shock. Go and stop Zaraki Kenpachi, and then rushed over. Behind him, all Zanpakuto rushed over, Byakuya Kuchiki, Senbon Sakura at the same time, reaching out, countless Sakura petals formed two Sakura styles and attacked Zaraki Kenpachi directly. Mr. Kurosaki, here, apart from Kenpachi, you are the only one with the strongest destructive power. The task of destroying and solving the barrier is left to you, please. Muramasa and other Zanpakuto, leave it to us, said Yunohana Retsu. He rushed directly towards the village. At the same time, there were other people who disappeared. Yoruichi came to Ichigo and said, I will leave it to you, Ichigo. Yoruichi kissed Ichigo and disappeared, and Yoruichi appeared next to Yunohana Retsu. Chapter 135. The middle plan. Holding Tensei-Zanjetsu in his right hand, Ichigo rushed directly towards the barrier that sealed the chief captain. Murakami noticed Ichigo immediately, but he was entangled by Yunohana Retsu and faced Kido, whom Yunohana Retsu had taken at his fingertips. With the power to resist, but not the ability to rush out, Ichigo is getting closer and closer to the commander's barrier. But Muramasa couldn't get out at all. In the end, Muramasa could only wave his hand and said loudly, Quick, go and stop Kurosaki Ichigo. We must not let him destroy the barrier of the seal commander. As Muramasa said, Byakuya Kuchiki and Senbon Sakura immediately charged towards Kurosaki Ichigo. 3. Shu! Yoruichi suddenly appeared in front of Byakuya Kuchiki and said with a smile, Little Byakuya, now is not the time for you to leave. In front of Senbon Sakura, Broken Bee stood in front of him and said, I will never let you guys go again, forward. Boom, boom, a huge black armored samurai held a huge knife in his hand and slashed towards Yoruichi and Broken Bee. With a sound of, dang, Zaraki Kenpachi directly blocked the knife with Zanpakuto in his hand. The corner of his mouth cracked and said, The power of this knife is very good. I'm starting to be a little interested in you. Come on, let's fight. Huh? Ichigo stopped at the barrier of the commander-in-chief Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni, held the sword in his right hand, and raised it directly above his head. If you want to break the barrier of the commander-in-chief, I am afraid that you will need a lot of Ryatsu. Control your own strength. Ichigo closed his eyes slightly, and at the same time, the Ryatsu in his body continued to emerge, converging on the Tensei-Zanjetsu in his hand. Behind him, the melee of the others was in full swing, but there was no person came to disturb Ichigo, although Muramasa kept shouting, but no one was able to cross the boundary set by Yunohana Retsu. Suddenly, Ichigo opened his eyes, and his left hand was also on Tensei-Zanjetsu. Shu! Village appeared in front of the barrier, holding Zanpakuto in both hands, and in front of Yunohana Retsu. Zanpakuto blocked Yunohana Retsu's face. Although it was only a short moment, it was enough for Muramasa, enough for him to break away from Yunohana Retsu and rushed in front of Ichigo. Ichigo held Tensei-Zanjetsu and said, Then we will split it with you. As the Ryatsu on Ichigo's body skyrocketed again, the Ryatsu soaring to the sky was like a substance, and Ichigo slashed down, Crescent Moon. Skychong. A black arc-shaped blade slammed towards the barrier. Of course, Muramasa was still standing in front of the barrier. When he was released, Ichigo looked at Muramasa and smiled, and Muramasa was surprised to see this smile, but Muramasa didn't think much about it at this time. With the release of the blade, the battle below stopped in a short moment, and everyone focused their attention on this black blade. Muramasa standing in front of the barrier, before Ichigo released the Crescent Moon, his feet were as motionless as a rock, and he seemed to be planning to defend the barrier, but when Ichigo held Tensei-Zanjetsu and just cut it down, Muramasa ducked. Opened, so the Crescent Moon shot directly on the barrier that trapped Yamamoto Uenyuji, and the huge force generated by the boom Crescent Moon after hitting the barrier made the whole area seem to tremble. Immediately, the whole ground collapsed completely, and a huge energy rushed towards the surrounding area. Heineka, Feimei, Wushingtu, these Zanpakuto, who were not too strong, couldn't even stand, and were directly attacked. The huge energy rushed out, and it was the Black Rope after Bankai who rescued them. What's the matter? Muramasa's last move caught the eyes of all Shinigami and Zanpakuto. Each of them is very puzzled, and they don't know what Muramasa is doing. I got it, I've been tricked. Yunohana Retsu landed next to Ichigo and said. Ichigo looked over and saw a trace of worry on Yunohana Retsu's face. You must know that Yunohana Retsu has always been very calm, just like a pool of water. It seems to be always so calm, and occasionally there is a hint of other expressions. For example, when the black-bellied nature is exerted, Yunohana Retsu will have a hint of other expressions at this time, floating like a breeze that occasionally blows. It was very rare that Yunohana Retsu showed a worried look now. Crack. The barrier that trapped the chief captain Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni suddenly made such a sound, and then the entire barrier collapsed. Yunohana Retsu wanted to reappear, but at this moment other Zanpakuto had already appeared one after another, blocking the village in front of Jung. Although they are also very puzzled why Muramasa let Ichigo break the barrier, but before everything is known, they will still work hard to protect Muramasa's safety. Haha. Village was looking at Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni in the broken barrier and slightly stretched out his hand, and suddenly a force immediately attacked Yamamoto Uenyuji Shigekuni, but none of the Shinigami had time to stop him. Advertisement, we were fooled. His purpose was not to provoke Zanpakuto's mutiny, let alone house arrest the commander-in-chief. His purpose was to use our power to destroy the barrier of the commander-in-chief. Ujiwali said. This barrier is always the captain set up to protect himself, not Muramasa set the seal of the captain. And his previous actions were all to achieve this goal. Impossible. Yoruichi shook his head abruptly and said, those actions of Zanpakuto, but I don't want to tempt us at all, etc. Yoruichi looked at Muramasa and narrowed his eyes slightly. If all Zanpakuto are the same like a chess piece, it is at your mercy, but if it is just your tool, it all makes sense. Because it is just a chess piece, there is no need to know the truth, but in order to achieve your goal, you provoke Zanpakuto betrayed his master, thus causing chaos in the Soul Society, and then deliberately ask Yoruichi to bring out the news that the captain was here, and then deliberately ambush here with other Zanpakuto. The purpose is to convince us that your purpose is to let Zanpakuto rebel master. No, hearing Yoruichi's words, Fei immediately said to Muramasa, Big brother Muramasa, tell her quickly, she is talking nonsense. Sir Shihouin Yoruichi, you are really smart, Muramasa said with a smile. Although it was a compliment, in Yoruichi's eyes, it was a humiliation, a naked humiliation. Although there was no change in Yoruichi's face, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. However, Muramasa's words were considered to be acknowledging what Yoruichi said, so the expressions of Zanpakuto around him began to get excited. At this time, Yamamoto Yuenujai Shigekuni slightly opened his eyes and said, it looks like you guys have been put together. After saying that, Yamamoto Yuenujai Shigekuni disappeared and appeared beside Yunohana Retsu and Ichigo. Looking at Muramasa, his purpose is to spy on my spiritual world. Spiritual world. Yoruichi read a sentence, then looked at Muramasa and said, what do you want to do, Muramasa? Hey, I'll just tell you a little bit, Muramasa said. I was the abyss-like spiritual world of Yamamoto Genujai Shigekuni from the beginning, but he was very alert. When I first appeared, he closed it off. In his spiritual world, he sealed himself in another dimension at the cost of losing his consciousness. That barrier was the embodiment of his power to seal himself. He couldn't break this barrier. It wasn't that my strength was not enough, but he had already calculated it when he closed it. If I forcibly break it, then the counterattack of the barrier will also seal me off. In order to break the barrier, I designed Zanpakuto to betray, just as I did. As I thought, without the captain in charge, Soul Society really fell into chaos because of Zanpakuto's betrayal. At the same time, I disguised Yamamoto Yuenujai Shogun as if it was sealed by me, and the next thing was simple, Shihouin Yoruichi found out. The trace of the Commander-in-Chief, of course I have to go back and discuss with you the rescue Commander-in-Chief. Said here, Muramasa turned around and said, then goodbye everyone Shinigami and Zanpakuto, thank you very much, you are very hardworking, especially the Zanpakuto, if you work so hard, my plan can't be so smooth, and Kurosaki Ichigo, your sword is very strong, even I may not be able to take it, but if it is not like this, it will not be able to break Yamamoto Genryusai, lead is. The barrier said by the Chongguo, then goodbye, I still have something to do, let's go first. Damn, do you want to leave like this? Kaden Kyokotsus looked at Muramasa with an angry look on his face. Muramasa glanced at her slightly, and waved his hand slightly like driving a fly away. Sorry, I don't have time to take care of you, you can do whatever you want. That's the best. The two Kaden Kyokotsu had big swords in their hands at the same time, and then directly charged towards the village with the big swords. At the same time, there were other Zanpakuto who rushed over. Obviously, they were also dissatisfied with the use of them by the village. I plan to counterattack Muramasa, but of course this is only part of it, and the other part is very hesitant, no matter what. Muramasa once led them, and suddenly asked them to counterattack Muramasa, which made them a little unacceptable, so they stood in place and did not move. It's a troublesome guy, Muramasa said softly, and saw a flame suddenly appeared on the ground, and then sparks drifted past Zanpakuto. In an instant, the blazing flames directly burned the entire pit, and all Zanpakuto were blown away. Within the range of the flames, including those Zanpakuto who did not counterattack Muramasa. For Muramasa, these Zanpakuto are useless, and it doesn't matter whether they stay or not, but since they dared to counterattack themselves, they will be destroyed directly.